Wednesday, September 12th, 2012 meeting of the Falmouth Conservation Commission. First on the agenda is Martin and Robin Murphy, 195 Great Bay Street, East Falmouth, for permission to upgrade with the new Title V sewage disposal system. Jen. Oh, wait, this is to continue.
Yes.
Request to continue.
Yes.
I make a motion to continue?
I need
Second.
to give you I need to give you guys a date.
Yes.
We'll fill in the date.
19th, September 19th.
We have a motion to continue,
September 19th.
and we have a second.
Second.
Get that? Ed? Ed?
I made a noise over here. Second.
Okay, any questions? Those of you in the back row, please stop talking. Any questions by people on the commission? Any questions by people in the audience? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, which is a continuance till September 19th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Walsh Brother Building Company, Inc., 146 Saconaset Road, Falmouth, for permission to upgrade with a new Title V sewage disposal system.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant has requested continuance until September 26th.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions on the board? Any questions from the audience? Okay, motion on the table is a continuance to September 26th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Excuse me. All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved.
Madam Chair, if I may, at this
Yeah.
point in time, I was approached by one of the members in the audience with a RDA that was scheduled. He received a letter that was for tonight's date, and I was curious if there was any other continuances of RDAs.
No.
It's,
What was the,
It was National Grid. You're their contractor? Oh. Well, apparently they didn't file.
I'll have to look into that.
and, one second, Racing Beach is on for the 19th. Sorry about that, sir.
So we'll see you next week. Okay,
Yeah,
good.
take
Thank
care.
you. Thanks.
thank you.
Okay, request to continue under request to amend the existing order of conditions. Philip Cavallo, 297 Quaker Road, North Falmouth, request to amend existing order of conditions, DEP 253764, to modify the existing deck, reconstruct steps, incorporate a landing, and install a stone wall. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman. The applicant is requesting a continuance until September 26th.
So moved.
Second?
Any questions from the commission? Any questions from the audience? Okay, hearing none, all in favor of a continuance till September 26th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Other business, we have two conservation restrictions. Jen, you have any comments?
I'm holding my comments for Josh's compact presentation.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Paula Paraso. I'm with the Compact of Cape Cod Conservation Trust, here representing 300 Committee Land Trust, Buzzards Bay Coalition, and the Morse family. The Morse family own adjoining lots on Quizet Avenue in Woods Hole, approximately 8.5 acres of which they intend to place under conservation restriction to be held jointly between the 300 Committee and the Buzzards Bay Coalition. The properties have salt marsh, tidal flats, shrub swamp, intertidal shore, some buffering upland, and as probably you're all aware, an ancient submerged white cedar swamp Properties are in rare species habitat, they're in partially within the historic district, and the owners would like to place a conservation restriction and have a perpetual conservation restriction, and under state law, the owners need the approval of the Board of Selectmen, and the Board of Selectmen need a recommendation from the Conservation Commission. So I'm here tonight to request a recommendation of approval from this commission to the Board of Selectmen so that we may approach the Board of Selectmen for approval of the CRs. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay.
I'm gonna let you guys go first.
Oh, you mean you have a question?
I don't have a question yet.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
interested in hearing questions, so, excuse me.
Okay, I have some comments. Does anybody else?
No questions.
Is there a management plan, or is there a description of the,
Did you read it?
You were
I
all,
didn't have in my packet.
Oh,
That's all.
yeah.
Too much to it, you can't read it
Thank you.
now. It's too much.
There was a description submitted, thank you.
Yeah. Did you want to make a comment?
No, I was very pleased to see what you're doing.
My only comment was in the permitted, you have prohibited, everything's prohibited except what's not prohibited.
the reserve
That's
rights.
that's the way they drafted.
Right. Right, we're familiar with these.
Madam Chairman, can I ask one question? Paula, does this have any upland attached to it?
The Quizit Harbor 2, the Kenneth Morse and Laura Morse CR has some upland to it, some buffering upland.
The one I'm talking about is Richard Morse,
Excuse me?
the Richard Morse one.
The Richard Morse, very little, very little.
Okay, see, that's what I think the board, if you didn't realize, is this is just one big wetland marsh parcel. There's no upland associated with this parcel. Okay? So it already is afforded the protection of the Wetland Protection Act and your bylaw. And I think that just segues into what Betsy's question is gonna be under the reserve rights. Is that what you're looking at, Betsy?
Well, I was wondering, remember I mentioned to you the part about the, maybe I'm looking at the wrong one.
No, it's number 5,
Under which
Oh,
one?
the right to store on a temporary basis timber or other vegetative debris originating on the premises so long as said debris is removed from the premises after a reasonable period of time.
Right, and that's only in conjunction with any activities that are permitted in here. So for example, if there was a diseased, if any of the vegetation was diseased and they cut it down and were removing it from the premises, if they were storing it like a brush pile, if they stored it there temporarily, or if a tree came down and it was posing a hazard and they moved it away and chipped it up, they might not remove it from the property immediately, but they need to remove it within a reasonable time. We don't want is piles of brush there.
Okay, and additional brush from other upland areas wouldn't be brought and stored?
No, this CR only permits temporary storing of brush, for example, that resulted from any activity that is permitted under here. So if the activity isn't permitted, there can't be a brush pile resulting from it. If the activity is permitted, there could be a temporary brush pile, but that needs to be removed.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
You can see where our concern is on that one, considering there is no upland in this parcel. It's all one big marsh wetland
yeah,
area.
I don't have a problem having this be put
Okay.
under conservation, from a conservation viewpoint.
Mhm.
I don't know if the selectmen would be as pleased, because my understanding is when something goes under a conservation restriction, the taxes for that land is decreased. And this land is already land that would have to come before Conservation Commission, and if it's wetland resource, there's very little you could do on it. So it's afforded protection through the Wetlands Protection Act and the Wetlands Bylaw. But, the idea of having a conservation restriction and the fact that these are adjoining lands across the marshland.
The Morse family is very, very conservation-minded. Mr. Morse, Mr. Richard Morse sits on the board of the Buzzards Bay Coalition, and the compact has put on a number of CR workshops over the years, and he came to a few of ours and came to us and he said, as a matter of principle, he wanted to put the CR on his land, even though it is protected under the Wetlands Act.
Yeah. And it's not to say that the Wetlands Act, we would hate to see it change, but could be.
That's what we always tell people. The Wetlands Act is right now is in place, but who knows what happens 20 years from now, or 100 years from now.
Let's say 100 years from now.
Just following up on your comment about the brush, I think the word temporary needs a definition. What is temporary? How long is temporary? That's not a big deal, but I think it's important that temporary could be a year in an eon, So I think there should be some kind of a definition of that word, They can store it for a month or 2 months, it doesn't matter, but there should be a termination point.
Okay, I think we can accommodate that. I'll talk to the owners and to both land trusts, and we'll come up with what.
Yeah, you understand,
In the season or by the next season or.
Yeah,
I mean,
it doesn't
storm
matter
damage.
the time, it just what the length of time is. It matters that there is a finite timeline.
Sure, understood.
Any other discussion?
Yeah, Madam
Yeah.
Chair. Yeah, I would just like to comment on the issue that's already arisen there. Sort of maybe want to ask the question, do we need additional protection for the property? And I'd be inclined very strongly to say yes. Times change, regulations change, compositions of review boards change. Even sometimes when there's no intent, errors can be made. I've seen a project or two slip through in my time, 8 or 9 years here, maybe only 1 or 2, slip through unintentionally. So anything can happen, therefore I think any additional restrictions that are placed on a piece of property are additional guarantees to protect those resources in perpetuity.
Yeah, and I say from a conservation point of view, I'm certainly in favor.
That's what
of
we're
it.
here to look at, right?
Yeah. So, does anybody from the audience want to comment? Okay.
I did have one question.
Okay.
I do remember, because.
Yep.
In here, they have, that you can't cut, remove, or otherwise destroy trees, grasses, or vegetation. And the other one was, planting or otherwise introducing or nurturing any trees or woody vegetation on the premises. So if there's invasive species, can you not remove them?
No, the way conservation restrictions are structured, the way the documents are structured, as Betsy said, is the first section prohibits everything. And then the reserve rights carves out exceptions. So for example, in the reserve right number 2, number 4, the right to remove non-indigenous plant species and Phragmites is specifically
Okay,
mentioned in here.
Thank you.
We always want people to remove invasive species if it's feasible.
Right.
Thank you.
So we don't want to prohibit that.
Okay, could we have a motion?
Make a motion to pass this along to the selectmen with the caveat of the description of time on that one
issue.
one line.
Second.
Okay, final chance to make comments. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Vote minutes, 8/29/2012. I'm not going to ask you. Yes.
Madam Chair, I've reviewed the minutes and find them to be substantially correct. But before I make a motion, I'll wait to hear if there are any other comments.
Okay, any other comments on the minutes of
Yes.
August 29th?
Yes.
Maury has a comment.
I have a comment, Susan. It says present Michelle West, and then you have her absent down below. And then on page,
She was present and absent. She's a marvelous person. Yeah.
there are a couple, like a lot, it just says a lot trees, there'll be a lot of trees. I'll give you the corrections. And
Just a
then
couple of little minor
things, and then on, page 13, there are just some minor, words that were, you know, how it was said, so that was all. And I will
Okay.
hand those out to you.
And will you give a second?
I will give a second.
All right, okay, we have a motion and a second.
Okay. My
Did you want
motion
to say
is,
something else?
no,
We have a motion and a second. The motion is to accept as read and discussed, and with the little corrections that we're gonna pass on to Susan. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. This, you got something coming down to you in a second. Request for determination of applicability. For those of you who are here, and I know there's at least one person here for an RDA, if staff gives a negative recommendation, that means you can go ahead and do with what you've agreed with staff. So the first one, Martin and Robin Murphy, 195 Great Bay Street, East Falmouth, is continued to September 19th. Second one is Thomas Crane, Charles Crane and Josephine DeGive, 39 Juniper Point Road, 37 Hinckley Road and Hinckley Road, map 51A 0103700B, Woods Hole, for permission to maintain and repair the surface and grade the right-of-way, prune vegetation and plant vegetation, repair all structures and buildings, repair and point up all seawall and retaining walls, including a large boulder that has come out of the seawall, to repair, paint, and oil the concrete and granite dock and floating docks, and to maintain the grade of the beach. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, this is some ongoing work, maintenance work that's done on the property.
Right, I think we've had
There's
this
a
in the
specific,
past.
methodology that the cranes follow.
Right.
Under the RDA process, so in following with that, methodology, we are recommending a negative 2 under the state bylaw with the return area boundaries not confirmed.
so move.
Second.
Sir,
Can I just make a few brief comments?
you certainly may. We have a motion and a second on the table. That's what our process is. And usually I ask the board first, but I'll let you make your comments, and then they might have comments.
They're somewhat.
We need, before you start, please.
Absolutely.
You have to tell us who you are.
Thomas Crane, 39 Juniper Point Road,
Thank you.
37 Hinckley Road. They're somewhat extraneous to their direct application, but one I want to bring to the board's attention, the excellent working relationship I as a homeowner have had with your staff over the many years. Sometimes it doesn't filter through to the commission, but I just want you to know as a homeowner how important that is to me, the responsiveness and hard working of your staff. I just want to put that on the record.
Well, I just want to tell you how nice that is for us to hear.
I thought you would, but you know, I wanted you to
You
have
wanted
the
to make
record.
sure it got out in public.
On the record. The other thing is just a general comment, if you'll permit me at this time. It may be somewhat irrelevant, but that is, if I could just urge the board, wherever it can, to focus its time and energy on enforcement, and wherever it's possible for the homeowners that have had a record of compliance to use as light a touch as possible, which is really, I think, what's going on here. But as far as enforcement priorities, the priorities on enforcement, I think it's what the taxpayers expect as a bottom line of your commission. That the conservation laws under your jurisdiction are going to be full and fairly enforced. And that's what we're looking for, and particularly in a time of scarce dollars, to be able to focus your priorities on the areas of people who just need whatever extra effort of your time. Also, I think it enhances credibility of the commission for taxpayers in general, but also for people like me who've tried to do the right thing. Now, I want to absolutely emphasize that I try to follow the law because I think it's the right thing, not because I'm worried about someone coming in and whacking me. So I want you to misconstrue that effort. But it's always somewhere in the back of our mind for the other homeowners to know that, you know, doing the right thing matters, and that you're going to focus on enforcement, and that, you know, people aren't just sort of running amok in town. It is a really, really important message. And then finally, just as a personal message, as someone who spent, 10 years of my life enforcing the federal health care laws in Washington, for the Inspector General, working on strategies, as I know I did, for all those years, to focus, scarce dollars where it matters on the people that need that extra attention. It's difficult to do, but, it really does matter. And so thank you for hearing me out.
Okay, and I may just call on you for some strategies. We certainly try to do that. It's, most of the people try to follow the laws and regulations because they recognize the importance of them. Unfortunately, not all of our neighbors do. So,
I'm aware of that, but I'm happy to take your call.
all right, thank you.
Thank you.
So, any other comments? So we have a motion and a second on the table and the motion is to accept staff's recommendation of a negative determination. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Okay. Walsh Brothers Building Company, 146 Saconaset Road, is continued until September 26th. Request for hearings under a notice of intent. We have 3 in a row that I'm gonna open together because we're gonna continue them together. Is that correct? Jen?
Yes.
Okay, and the 3 are all Phragmites removal projects. Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries, care of Brendan and Annette. Gunning Point, for permission to control and manage invasive plants in degraded salt marsh habitat. Second one is the 300 Committee, care of Brandon and Annette, Buzzards Bay Coalition. Sipwisset Road, again, for permission to control and manage invasive plants in degraded salt marsh habitat. And the third is Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries, care of Brendan and Annette, Buzzards Bay Coalition, for permission to control and manage invasive plants in degraded salt marsh habitat. Jen, these will all be continued to next week, is that correct?
Yes, Madam Chairman, there was a hiccup with a butter notification on the applicant's part, so they requested a continuance to the 19th. And as you did tonight, I would request that all 3 be open simultaneously.
Next time. Right, this is sort of ongoing work.
No, this is new work.
No, I know this is new work, but it's ongoing to try to control
Yes.
Phragmites, which is a very aggressive and invasive plant and taking over some of our marsh habitat, which is some of our most precious wetlands habitat. Okay, we're on to, yes?
And we'll have to make a motion for that, but
Oh.
do we have enough?
Right.
Do we have enough
Certainly
time for
we can.
those?
We have enough.
9:19 will be good? Okay,
We're gonna be a little busy for next couple.
I know, that's, okay.
Yeah.
So I make a
so we-
motion to continue this till September 19th.
Second.
Okay, finally, any other comments? Okay, all in favor of the motion to continue these 3 hearings, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved.
Point of clarification, is it the 19th or the 12th?
Today's the 12th,
Oh, yeah, right, true. There we go.
so
Not
it's
a
not
problem.
the
Next week
12th.
is next week.
Next week,
I-
next week is next week.
I remain corrected.
Jean and Joseph Sanger, 32 Valley Road, Falmouth, for permission to construct an enclosed porch and deck, install utilities, dry wells, native mitigation plantings, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Good evening, Barbara.
Good evening.
See if Jen has any comments, and then we'll turn it over to you. Jen?
I'll hold any comments until after the presentation.
But you have to wait 1 more minute, because I have to say, all hearings of the Falmouth Conservation Commission are heard simultaneously under the authority of the Wetlands, the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, and the Falmouth Wetlands Bylaw. Although a single decision is issued, it represents a separate decision under each authority. Welcome, Barbara.
Thank you very much. For the record, Barbara Frappier with Warwick and Associates, representing Joseph and Jean Sanger. This property is one that you have visited before for a septic upgrade, but what they're looking to do now is put on a small open porch and deck, and the open porch will have a dormered space above it. And this is the area in which it's going to be placed. This site has a shallow marsh here.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Barbara, do you have a tape recorder?
Yes.
Okay, anybody who's taping should inform the chairman, because it's open meeting law that everyone has to be told what's being taped,
And by whom?
and by whom.
Falmouth Enterprise.
Is it by whom? I don't think it's anybody's business by whom. I'm just a point of clarification.
That's what I was,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can I get
Yes.
back to my show?
Yes,
All right.
we've seen it for a septic upgrade, and
Yes, you
now,
have. This is the property here, the little blue dot. I just wanted to give you an overview of the Natural Heritage website. There's 2 shallow marshes here, and there's a shrub swamp in the back. This is a heavily wooded lot, and when they did the septic upgrade, the current owners and the previous owners put a lot of effort into cleaning out areas where debris had been dumped in the marsh, planted a lot more trees down here, so they're very good stewards of this land. What they're putting in is very minimal in size. As you can see, it's here where some shrub plantings, this bulkhead's gonna go away. And some of this area ekes into the 100-foot buffer. There is a secondary coastal bank. And in making the assessment, you have figures in here for the assessment for how much mitigation planting we are proposing. It's down here. It's 429 square feet of mitigation planting. And I'm showing it in this area here, which is adjacent to the shrub line, the existing vegetated line. I would tell you in advance, it may not be that exact shape, although we locate the trees 5 and 6 inches in caliper. There are other smaller trees. So it will be in this area, fill in that hole, but it may be more expansive in total square footage as far as the overall area of planting. The only other thing is up here, we have a tree, which you can see if anyone went up to the site. It's
Died.
dead, and it's going in. So that tree will come down, and we're going to replace it with 2 scrub oaks, also down into the buffer closest to the marsh. Our buffer plantings were going to be Viburnum dentatum and Clethra, as well as the 2 scrub oaks. And we have a limit of work shown here, basically around the planting, and the planting is going to be as you like it, just planted in the actual soil and ground cover, and just left to grow up all by itself.
okay,
So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
no question?
We don't have any questions, Madam Chairman, unfortunately. Still don't have a filing in Barbara.
I know.
So we'll have to continue it.
To the 19th, I can't close it without filing.
That's, I understand, and I'm going to go to Lakeville and try to get my number before the 19th.
Yeah, it'll probably come.
Part of the reason to, the
When
impetus
did
of
you
getting this
submit
done is there's a little leak in the roof over here, and that's part of what they're gonna do to,
Blue tarp. I have a
Yeah,
lot
I
of
know, blue
hur-
tarp.
I have a lot of hurricane experience.
I know. I hate those blue tarps.
Any questions?
No
Courtney?
questions.
Ed?
Yeah, just one, I understand that you said you've been before us on a septic upgrade, but I'm looking at a plan that says existing cesspool.
Well, sorry, I'll take that off before next week.
Well,
Thank you.
see, the continuance will get the
You'll get your
Existing
existing
cesspool?
cesspool off.
I don't want,
out of there.
please don't make 12 more copies though, please.
No, I will not.
Okay.
They don't need to do that.
I have a question. Do you know,
Sure.
it's an oak that died. Do you know what it is?
I do not, do you?
Well, apparently there's a
couple.
there's a scourge on oaks right now,
Really?
and I'm wondering if that was it. We had a big Methuselah oak taken down in our neighborhood
Yeah,
this week.
they're devastated at that, that's just dead as a doornail,
Yeah,
and
it's a problem, and, some of the tree people in town are aware of it, and they've been trying for a couple of years to come up with a method,
is it getting
deal with
all
it.
oaks or just certain ones?
certain species.
Well, that species, whatever it is.
Yeah. Blacks and red, black and red.
Black and red.
Yes.
I just had one question.
Sure.
Barb, the limit of work I know is probably way down there for the,
For the planting.
And I think we should just make sure in our, order that all the trees within that limit of work are to not be cut down
Oh,
except for the dead
yes.
oaks.
Well, that oak's up here.
Right,
Yeah, that's the only thing coming out.
yeah, it's
And
just,
that's why the planting area is a little vague, because we have to plant around all those trees.
it's just some contractors think when they see limit of work, anything inside it is theirs.
You know what, I'm gonna change, I'm gonna, I tried to stop using the words limit of work and just gone to siltation barrier, because that's really what it is.
Okay. And that was my only question.
I want to see this part of it up here, too. Is this it? Yeah, siltation barrier.
It goes all the way down here.
Right, but maybe there should be two.
Maybe you could have two.
Maybe you could have two. You
Where
could,
do you want the other one?
well, you could wrap the first one closer to
Right
the
by where
house.
the construction's
By
gonna
where the
be.
construction is.
Well, this one comes all the way up.
I know, but if you wrapped it in front of the house, then you wouldn't, then you still have a siltation barrier for the planting,
Construction.
but it's clear that nothing is to be cut between the two.
To just loop it by the construction.
See what we're saying?
No,
Basically from the brick patio
from the brick patio.
out around the
Loop.
side of the house.
To the
Oh,
side of the
so-
house.
So have that one there and put a second one on
Correct,
top.
a
Oh,
second
sorry.
one. Oh, maybe you didn't hear me say that.
No,
Yeah,
ching, okay, no
just so it's
problem.
clear where the construction is and where,
Because lots of times we'll make them plant first, and then they could plant and then remove that whole
Gotcha,
thing and then
and then there's just one.
consolidate.
all right,
Tommy?
I had no questions.
thank you.
Any questions from the audience? We're gonna have a continuance till next week, is that what we said?
919. At the request of the applicant,
Hold that thought.
Just when I thought I was getting out of here.
No, we might be able
We
to.
have the number?
We might get you out for
That's
good.
what I'm looking for, Barbara.
Oh.
And the only reason I have this is because Mr. Porcelli is.
Right.
Going to be contacting me.
It's almost like Michelle. Mike Borselli's supposed to be here and in Mashpee at the same time.
Not you, Barbara, sorry.
Oh, rats, okay.
so at the request of the applicant, this will be continued till 919 for the DEP number, and the cesspool to be removed off the plan.
I'll have that to staff prior to.
And a new
And a different limit of work.
plan, but you can give us 3 copies.
You want 3?
Is
To
that all right?
staff prior to the 19th.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't need it.
we don't need it. Jen will check it out,
Madam Chair, I'll second the motion.
okay? We have a motion and a second on the table to close this, not to close this hearing, unfortunately, to continue this hearing until 9:19. Last chance for anybody in the audience to make a comment on this project? For anybody to make a comment? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, continue to the 19th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It'll be lovely to see you next week.
I'm not coming, you don't need the file number, you don't need. Thanks.
Okay, Matthew and Ruslyn Seiler, 61 and 67 Nashwina Street, West Falmouth, for permission to relocate the existing house and expand to create a 6-bedroom, single-family house with porches, landscape features, appurtenances, install native mitigation plantings, and new Title V sewage disposal system with enhanced denitrification, and the associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant has requested continuance until September 26th.
So moved.
Second?
Any comments?
Just
Ed?
one comment, I was the site officer for that project. I will not be here next week, so you do need to assign a new site officer.
Yeah, I know, several of us have already been there, so, thanks, Ed. Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table, which is a continuance to the 26th, say aye.
Aye.
All
Next
opposed?
week or 2 weeks?
Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Continued request for hearings under a notice of intent. The Geraldine V. Griffith Trust, care of Geraldine V. Griffith Trustee, 32 Eldridge Drive, North Falmouth, for permission to add new riprap to supplement the existing riprap seawall that includes the installation of filter fabric, adding new crushed stone and riprap approximately 9 to 14 feet in width, remove trees and shrubs, install native mitigation plantings to supplement the existing vegetation, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping. Sir, welcome. If you'll wait for just a second, we'll see any comments that Jen has.
I have a few comments, Madam Chairman, but I'll wait until after the presentation.
Okay, sir, could you tell us who you are first? And
I'm
then-
Bill Madden from GAF Engineering.
Okay.
I'm here on behalf of the Geraldine Griffith Trust. Clark Griffith is a trustee as well. He's with me tonight as well.
Okay,
The project that we presented before the Conservation Commission is essentially one to add additional riprap to the top of an existing armored coastal bank. We're proposing to add somewhere between 7 and 10 feet of additional riprap on the top to remedy a condition that's been occurring out there over time. Originally, the initial revetment was constructed in 1938 or 1939 after the big hurricane of that year, and it was constructed by picking rocks off the beach down there and placing them against the slope. We assume that it was placed against the slope that was eroded from the hurricane. Over years in '54, the two hurricanes of '54 caused a little further deterioration in there. And I think what's occurring over time is that we got a little bit of minor washout from behind those stones. It wasn't constructed per, today's standards, similar to the way that we're proposing to construct the addition. So they were essentially just the boulders that were available at the time were picked off the beach and placed against the embankment. Seems to me that that the boulders have slid down and essentially made a pile to some degree at the base of that slope. And other efforts have been made over the years. I think as recently as 2006, there was a plan presented to the Conservation Commission. Order conditions was issued to do basically a softer engineering approach, a planted scheme of that area, about 1,200 feet. It didn't seem to hold up as well as what should be expected for a coastal bank type of restoration. I think that the environment there, where it's north facing, is a little more harsh than what you see on a south facing, well, maybe a south facing bluff in certain parts of town. But I think that northerly wind, particularly throughout the winter months, has just caused a little bit more erosion to occur from behind those stones. I don't think that the material from behind the stones is finding its way out to the beach, but it does seem to have settled somehow. Rocks, the boulders then fall down, pile up, and we lose a little bit of height. I think if you made a comparison to the original drawing that was done in 2006, which I did, I just kind of drew a line from behind that deck. The deck is in the same place. Seems like in this portion down here, I guess that would be the westerly side of the embankment or the revetment. Might appear to me that some of those rocks have slid down. So I don't think that the stability, the long-term stability, has been achieved out there the way we'd like to see it done for protection of the bank and the enhancement of storm damage prevention that bank currently provides. So what we're looking to do is extend it up the slope a little bit as the detail shows, reconstruct about 3 feet of the existing and build it conventionally with a geotextile fabric and then a graded layer of stone, gravel, say trap rock, and then 1 to 2 cubic foot boulders or rocks, which those weigh probably in the order of magnitude of 500 to 750 pounds apiece. Then above that area, we're looking to plant it right essentially to the top, to the top of the coastal bank with a planting scheme. So what we're attempting to do here is just try to achieve some long-term stabilization of that bank so that we can ensure there's some storm damage prevention of that bank. The bank, as it stands today, it would not be considered a sediment source. It is a vertical buffer for storm damage. And we think that this is really one of the only ways that we could provide some longer-term protection of that bank in that particular location. We did show the work going right up to the property lines. I think that if I were to revise that plan, I would maybe call for it to be pulled back 5 or so feet and go with a densely vegetated buffer to provide some type of root system, root mass between the hard surface and the existing vegetation that's immediately adjacent to it. But that's really the sum and total of the project. That's what we're trying to achieve down here. Over the years, I think that, it's been there for over 75 years. It's wasn't done per any engineering standard, and I think that the results that we're seeing here are indicative of the methodology that was employed at the time to construct it. I think that if we're able to take ourselves down 3 or 4 feet into that existing stone, build it the way it could be built, I think we do it right. We avoid any long-term maintenance issues. I think that we should expect the thing to stay in place for quite some time, 40, 50 years, provided that it's constructed properly. So that's the reasons why we're before you tonight, and to be happy to entertain any questions you may have.
Thank you. Jen?
When's the last time you were out on the site?
I was out on the site, the last time I personally was on the site was August 24th in 2011. Brian Grady was out on the site this year.
Okay. So you are aware that it is a completely and densely vegetated coastal bank, and that the project that the applicant was permitted to do in 2006 has actually done its job very nicely up there.
Well, I have photographs here I'd gladly pass around that show pretty large areas of bank that is unvegetated. They're not eroding, but the vegetation that's down there is not very significant in my view. There is some small trees that are in the area, but as far as dense ground cover that would act as a buffer to precipitation events, to runoff that comes down the slope, I consider it probably 60% vegetated. I mean, the things with respect to the actual basal area of the plant material that's on that bank.
I'm sorry, Brian, I have to respectfully disagree with you. Madam Chairman, you remember this project? We went out there and fell down that staircase. And I'm
do
sure a
remember.
lot of you visited the site.
No, Ed visited.
If you were
I
to,
visited the site last week.
if you were to get this permitted, Brian, how would you access the site? Would you come in through a barge, or would you come from the top of the slope?
We would have to access the site with a barge.
Okay, and you don't feel that you need to, I mean, your proposal is to build on top of the existing, rock structure there. You don't think you're gonna have to shore that up at all, put some toe stones down or anything like that to secure these 7 to 10 feet of riprap you're gonna place on top of it?
If you look at the photographs, what has happened here is there's a large mass that's at the actual toe of that embankment. That's where all those rocks have accumulated. The drawings don't necessarily reflect the depth of the rock mass. We're not able to get in there, but there is a distinct break between the slope and where that rock mass is down at the toe. In my opinion, the toe stones that were there were suitable. They did not indicate any degree of movement to me. It appears to me that the material has slid off the bank. The rocks have rolled, have moved over time, and that's why it's essentially sagging.
That's not what I'm asking. How are you gonna secure the top of it without rebuilding from the bottom up?
We are
Is
going
your
to,
plan, are you gonna redo the whole wall, or just add that top on the top of it?
no, we're gonna reconstruct about 3 feet, 4 feet down. So the crane will operate from the water side.
So you're gonna take everything that's out there right now?
No.
And remove it?
No. We're going to start above the mean high water line. And we're removing what I expect the contractor to is to remove sections of rock, move them to the side on top of the existing rock, place the,
So basically you're redoing the whole wall from mean high water up?
no, it's going to occur about from elevation 5 or 6, so it's a foot or 2 above mean high water. where the,
Okay. Madam Chairman, I do have some concerns with this. You and I were both out there. We looked very carefully at that slope and at the understory, and I just don't see the necessity to remove a fairly stable bank at this point to put riprap there. Like I said, the project they did, and if you look at the pictures from the 2006 file, which I don't believe is up here, I mean, they did have an erosion problem back then, and their planting scheme did help significantly. That was a great project that the applicant undertook. And it seems to have vegetated that bank nicely. I'm sorry, I just don't see the erosion issues that, that you say are there.
I don't think I stated that there was an erosion issue. I think what I stated was the ground cover, the basal layer, the plant material that is on that slope is somewhat sparse. When we have a tree of 3-inch or 4-inch diameter tree, that's one thing, but, those photographs are taken in the summer months. The winter period of time is a.
You have a lot of bayberry out on that slope. You have a tremendous amount of bayberry out on that
Right.
slope as well as trees. I mean, you do have some grasses, but I mean, you do have a significant shrub layer on that bank. And to remove it, I think you'd just be causing more disturbance than that to that bank, and ultimately, you're gonna be just destabilizing the top of it all over again. Those are my only comments, Madam Chairman. The board has been out there.
Okay, well, Courtney?
Just an aside, I believe a representative for the Salt Pond Bird Area Sanctuaries just came into the meeting and not knowing it's been continued. So, thank you. Sorry, long trip. Okay.
Would you like to ask questions, or should we start with Ed's prepared?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question, actually.
All right, I'll let you go, and then we'll let Ed go.
Following up on this, your testimony is that that the existing wall was not constructed as per the current standards with filter cloth and all of that, and that's causing the erosion. It seems to me that that should be the focus of your energies, and I don't understand why your application isn't to rebuild that wall, because according to your testimony, the reason for the erosion above is because the wall's being degraded below. So you go and build a new wall on top of something that's already degraded. It's like throwing good money after bad, I would think. And it seems to me that the wall should be reconstructed from the ground up and done properly, and that would be a better approach. And rather than just adding more riprap above, my only comment.
Ed?
Yes, I was out to the site much more recently than the applicant's representative. And I have to agree with Ms. McKay. When I went to the site, what I saw was a very densely vegetated coastal bank. And I looked around, kind of scratching my head and wondering why we have this application before us. And actually, I became very concerned that the work proposed here is going to do a lot more damage to what's there, and there's no real problem that I saw that needed to be corrected. And I'd also add that this particular parcel is on the inner portion of Megansett Harbor. Megansett Inner Harbor is protected by an extensive jetty, a major structure. I'm guessing it's about 100 feet. And it really protects all of the shoreline inside that harbor, and particularly this particular stretch of the shoreline, because it faces north. Most of the storms and most of the fetch, if you will, all in Buzzards Bay area comes from the southwest. But in this particular area, you have no fetch because it's a very short distance to the opposite side of the harbor. So no real opportunity for any wave action to to generate and threaten this particular coastal bank. And finally, I have to say that, I'm looking and there's no evidence whatsoever to me that this particular structure is threatened in any way by any potential storm damage in the future. What you might have in this whole area is some kind of storm surge increasing water elevation, but no heavy surf and no heavy wave action, which tends to really tear apart the coastal banks when it does happen. This would just be still water rise, and the still water will actually go down once the storm passes. And with a heavily vegetated bank, it will most likely do very, very little damage because the existing bank is, and I said, is in such pretty good shape. So, I really think this is a very bad idea, and I have to say our regulations do not permit us to allow any new work on armoring coastal banks where structures are not threatened by storm damage. That's all I have to say.
Thanks, Ed.
To clarify one thing, part of this does fall within a velocity zone. so
I know.
it would be a little
I have
bit more than
questions.
Stillwater rise, so I mean, there's some like that, but,
It isn't a velocity zone, and we have velocity zone regulations also that would prevent.
They're not always
They
as
build it.
precise to every piece of property as we would like.
No, you are correct, Ed, but it is right. You were
Well,
good in your-
relative
in
to
your-
most of
yeah,
that coastline, this
visual
is a pretty safe
assessment,
area.
Yeah, you were right in your visual coastal assessment, at least in my opinion, that it is a very vegetated bank, and as I said, I think your former project worked quite well.
You briefly described doing the sections going from the west towards the north, holding it back 5 feet, creating a root mass at the border. When you go across the existing structures, what's your intent with those? Are you gonna remove them, replace them? How would you get the materials and how would you address that area where the existing deck and stairwell is?
That deck would have to be temporarily removed and put in place.
Okay, do you anticipate having to do a different type of anchoring system to that, now that you're gonna be armoring up above?
To be honest with you, I didn't look at it that closely, but I would imagine that we would have to provide different type of foundation support for the columns of the deck that are there. So whether we would use a helical is probably what my choice would be in that particular instance. But I think that was something that we hadn't looked into that closely.
That would have to be part of the plan, just so you know. Any alterations of that would have to be addressed so that if this is approved, that you have a finite description for the contractors to follow. The barge coming up, there would also be a methodology that we'd want to have as far as the timelines between tides, that type of thing. And the oils, if it's an excavator, you had made mention, you'd want to have a user-friendly fluid inside the hydraulics. The removal of fill for this mass that's going to be put in there, a calculation of how much fill is going to be removed would also be very helpful. And how you're going to be a little bit more meat to the meal as far as describing how the methodology of, if everything's going to go, try to really investigate all that's necessary. I'm not going to be, I'm not focusing on the rest of the bank. I have other members that can do that. I was kind of looking at the methodology. That was where my attention had been, and how to really make that a usable order, if so granted.
Well, just by way of example, I have 30 years' experience designing coastal structures and what have you. All the points that you have brought up are very, very valid points. We are able to provide the proper methodology to complete the work and describe it in a manner that would be suitable to the board. That's in the event the project is allowed to advance. I agree with you wholeheartedly that perhaps you could have gone into a little more detail on the construction methodology. Certainly that is going to be the thing that makes the project work or not work, and it's the key to any project, whether it's this or a roadway or a drainage project. But very good points, and I understand.
And when a notice of intent is issued, it's for your benefit as well to have that.
Absolutely, there's no misunderstanding on
It's
anybody's
just
part.
it's a little too vague for me to be able to get my teeth into fully, that's all.
Okay.
The project is presented.
The project as presented.
Right.
That's
Yes.
what we
Thank you.
reviewed.
Tommy,
My questions have been answered, thank you.
Maury.
It would have, you should probably go out and see how well it has revegetated since the last time you were out there. And the 2 points you brought out were the lack of vegetation in between, there are like bare spaces. And there are a few there, but I think that you could probably augment them versus putting in all this revetment. And unfortunately, the revetment project will take out half of the existing tree structure on that coastal bank, which is actually holding the coastal bank. So it's sort of a counterproductive exercise to remove the stabilization of that bank, which are the tree roots. And the other thing that you brought up in your narrative is it's an ongoing problem, which I went out there several times, way back, when there was the dock, I think the stairs or something a few years ago. And it was a rainy day when I went out there. There's a house that's new, that's over on the, I wanna say it's the, east side. Anyway, there's a lot of runoff from that lot that sheds off, and there's a lot of runoff from this house. There's a little bit of a swale in front of it before it gets to the coastal bank, so it does slow down. And you're in the right direction trying to put junipers along that to obviously slow down the top wash over on the bank, which is what I looked at. That would seem to be a lot of the problem, more than the wave action. So I think, my opinion is that you might want to try fixing this in a simpler way. I'm not really for this revetment because I think that it's revegetated very well from when you did your first project. And to work with the runoff, the sheeting off at the top, which is causing a lot of the problem. And I would have to concur with Court that, you're building a well-designed wall on top of a poorly designed wall. And it's not probably gonna be that successful.
Just on a clarification, we were looking to reconstruct a portion of the existing wall, and where that would start is where that larger mass of rocks, if you look at the photographs, there's a larger mass, and then the slope breaks and changes, and it runs up the slope a little bit. So we were looking to replace,
So you're gonna redo the whole thing?
not the
basically.
whole thing, but, we think that the mass at the base is rather deep. So if we looked at, it's kind of difficult to show on this particular cross-section, but these rocks almost seem like they're a little bit more substantial down at the base, and that forms the toe of that wall. So our thoughts was to come up above that toe, where that mass is, reconstruct 4 or 5 feet, and then rebuild and add the additional footage. I have a little bit of a different viewpoint on the tree structures. I mean, trees are very good to have, but sometimes I think that on a bank situation, like on a dam, the bank of a dam, for example, wind, rain events in combination to each other, when a tree gets pulled over, toppled over, leaving the root, the hole that the tree once laid in, that is a source of erosion that could degrade the bank to some degree. So my personal preference is a lower growing, denser vegetation as opposed to overstory trees on a coastal bank type of restoration. But the points are all very well taken. I did understand the issue on the fetch. My major concern was the northerly winds in the winter months. I understand the concept of fetch, the southwest and the north. It is in the V zone, and the still water elevation, I believe, is 15, and the wave height that's predicted by FEMA over there, I think, is around 5 feet. So that's
Okay, I have some questions now.
very good.
Well, I have a comment first. This is one of those areas that everybody's saying it's such a poorly built, designed wall. Those of you who were out there, this is what the wall is along all of there that was probably put in after the 38 hurricane. It looks like what you would find as a wall if you went around Nishan Island, natural walls that break up wave energy. And in fact, I think,
It's working.
considering that it's been there for 74 years, and it may be that, I don't know how long the thing across McGantic's been, but it's working.
It's doing a good job.
And the vegetated bank is like, wow, this is really cool. Here's something that probably had trouble because of washover from the top,
That's what
which is
you-
often what we see our problems with banks. It's water coming over the top, not splash from the bottom. And that vegetation is it complete? No, but it's growing, it's continuing to grow. It has a nice root mass now. It's gonna have a bigger root mass as time goes on. So I want to point out, so for almost 75 years, it's done its job. If you were to build this wall, to either side, you have houses that don't have it. Are we to expect that they're gonna come in? I mean, my issue with Armor and Coastal Banks is if you extend it, we had one person here years ago, who a couple of you will remember, the gap theory. And my reaction to the gap theory is if we fill in all those gaps, we're gonna have a fortified, it's gonna be the Falmouth fortified village. It's not gonna be the hordes from the Picts from Scotland. It's gonna be the ocean. And I don't think that's the kind of waterfront that we want all around Falmouth. And the other question is, the only condition under which new seawalls, new revetments would be allowed now is if the house was under imminent threat. And would you say the house is under imminent threat?
Well, I guess the question would come up, is it really considered new, or is it repair and remediation of existing? No, the house is, I'll answer your question straight up, no, the house is definitely not under any threat of being lost.
No, and I will tell you that we have allowed remediation of walls that have been rebuilt. There's a couple of areas in town. But to be perfectly honest, Courtney's throwing good money after bad. This is working. I don't know why people would want to spend money building the kinds of walls that are other places. And the only other point which has come out, it is in the velocity zone, and we do have, in our regulations, I'm sure you've looked at our regulations, there's certain restrictions as to what you can do with coastal banks in velocity zones.
Yeah, and without, getting involved in too much detail with the wording of the bylaw and the ordinance, I'll just leave it at that. I have looked at it, and we thought that that we could work through that with this particular project, as I think that your bylaw says. This is item A under one of the portions of the bylaw. But we thought that there may be an opportunity to repair the existing wall. I sense where the commission's coming from. As I said, it's not my first rodeo, so I think what we ought to do is take your comments back, discuss them with my client, and make a determination as to which way we would choose to proceed.
Okay, so do I hear you asking for
I will be
continuance?
doing that, yes.
Okay,
Madam Chair, I just want to.
yes.
So, Mr. Madden, I liked Maureen's idea of just
essentially what we're trying to do, we have a hard armor face down to the water's edge. It's not as stable as it really could be, isn't as stable as what today's practices would require us to, how today's practices would require us to build it. We were just looking to retain that structure and then embellish on it to some degree, and
It's the embellished part that,
I hear you loud and clear, and I fully understand where you're coming from.
yeah. Okay, so what I think I'm hearing is you're asking for a continuance,
Yeah,
and then,
we respectfully request a continuance.
Right,
yes,
and
we
then-
will have an opportunity
and
to
then-
discuss this.
when you do come back, I think if you want us to look at a plan like this, I think, listen to what Tom said, we would need a lot more detail on exactly how you're gonna do it, especially if you're gonna
Well,
do it by
I mean,
barge and so
quite
forth.
honestly, my sense of the commission's position on it is the hard armor doesn't fly. And if the hard armor doesn't fly, there would be really no need to spend clients' money developing a construction methodology for something that's not gonna be built. So I think that what we need to do is re-examine what our goals are and try to achieve those goals in maybe a little bit different manner.
Okay, okay, thank you.
Dry wells,
Yes.
Mr. Madden, unfortunately, the board is really busy the next 2 weeks, and then they don't meet again for 2 weeks. The earliest and the next available hearing I have, forgive me, my other calendar is downstairs, is October 17th.
Whatever, that's fine,
Okay.
no problem.
Just wanted to make sure.
There's no, I don't think there's a real urgency
Okay.
right now on that, but
Okay.
October 17th is fine.
At the request of the applicant, we are continuing this to October 17th.
Second.
Okay, any other questions on the board? Questions or comments for the applicant's representative? Any questions from the audience?
I don't have a question. Do we get to say anything?
Sure.
Yes.
I'm the daughter of Geraldine Burkle.
You do, questions or comments, but
Okay.
what you have to do is,
I'm
you have
going
to,
there.
you have to go even a little more, you have to tell us who you are,
I will.
and then you make your comments.
I will. Do you have anything to say? Come up here with me now.
My name is Suzanne Lyons. I'm Geraldine Griffith's daughter. This is Clark Griffith. He is the spouse. They are both 80 years old, and my stepfather, in the last 50 years that he's been there, has fixed the storm surge, whether it's a storm surge or it's waves, every 10 years, it knocks out. And it only knocks out us, not our neighbor. This guy got it this time. We did come here, we did fix it. My stepfather thought this would be a good idea because he doesn't want to do it again. So in 10 years, when it comes again, which actually was 2006, so it'll be 2016, he won't be here or he doesn't want to do it. So we
can't
don't
understand
need
why.
to continue this. I will be here, and I will have to come and ask permission again. I don't want to, this is a $100,000 project.
Say you want?
It's a big project. I hear you guys, what you heard him saying was it's probably isn't the best idea. We'll come back, we'll find out what is a good idea. Yes, the vegetation is coming very good. There's a lot of inkberry there. There is some bayberry up the top. There's a lot of inkberry. Some of it worked, some of it didn't work. They put in some trees, 12 of them died. So anyway, so we're here, we'll go home, we'll talk about it. We have, how do we not continue it or,
You are
Paul.
continuing, you are
Okay.
continuing, and.
Thank you.
And we didn't say that nothing can be done.
yep, I understand.
But we're discourring, certainly discouraging. you from
barge.
Coming back. No, but coming back for the additional amount.
Okay.
We have allowed walls to be rebuilt in the same footprint.
And I can tell you in that 2006 storm, all those stones moved, all of them. The whole thing went this way into the water. And I don't know whether it's up or down, but it only hits one section of the beach and it's our house. So
You must be in a special location.
it is a special location.
It is special, it's
It's a
beautiful
beautiful
out there.
spot. Thank you for all your time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for coming, sir. Okay,
Yeah, I'm Clark Griffith. I'm Geraldine Griffith's husband. And in 41 years that we've been married, just Suzanne says there have been 3 incidents. The first one was February 1, 1974. There were 100-mile-an-hour winds that came on the high tide, right directly across from Scraggy Neck and the Maritime Academy. overtopped everything completely and washed a significant portion of the face of the bank all the way to the top. Opened it right up to a sheer drop. And it looked just like a cranberry bog sandhole that spring. We came in and we dug a cellar. We had the material, we fixed it, we terraced it. We used pine poles and we terraced it and planted all the root structure plants that we could find from the County Conservation District. And it held very well until one of the hurricanes, which overtopped it again. Our exposure is northwest and north to northeast. Southwest goes to Scraggy Neck. They get the daytime waves, nighttime waves. We don't get that. We just get a light, a lulling, rolling water situation. That, the hurricane did wash out at one point under our stairs. You could walk without, and reach up and not touch the stairs. There were a series of holes. They were relatively easy to repair because there were a series of holes. The third one was in 2005. It was an 8-foot tide surge in December, which overtopped everything and created the washout, which the order of conditions came from here to repair. Fortunately, our neighbor was building a cellar. We had the material on site, and we were able to fill it, and we planted. The one sorry part of the planting was one of the plants that was directed to be planted was a high bush blueberry, which does not grow on the beach, unfortunately. They died within a week of being there. There was one in there, it's called a inkberry. That's a delightful, delightful plant to plant on a coastal bank. It has a wonderful growth habits, and for my money, it's a damn good plant. We planted beach grass, we planted bristly locust, and several of the other plants that are in there have done their job as far as they go. But when these surges come, their roots just don't hold. There's no way. Our neighbor lost a giant oak tree. As Bill Madden said, it was just undermined and it just collapsed. And oak trees do not have a big root ball. They wouldn't reach from me to the committee. They have just a mighty tiny root ball. But the locust trees that we have, they're great. If anybody's ever tried to take a locust out, you might as well get the biggest bulldozer you can find because they just don't go. And I'm pleased that they're on the cliff. We have some pitch pines. I've had pitch pines just blow over. And my man that works for me and I have picked up the stump from a tree this big and put it in the truck and taken it away. They don't have much of a root structure either. Theirs goes straight down. But these other plantings that go in there have done their job, but they just don't survive these terrible surges. And our steps that go to the beach itself, from the lower patio to the beach, I have to frankly say, in 41 years, I have 2 more steps that are underwater in the normal high tide. And this summer, there's a giant boulder out in front of us that normally we wouldn't see it disappear except in the spring neap tides. It's disappeared 3 times this summer. No storm, no nothing, just high tide. You would not know there was a boulder there. There were no shags sitting on it. There was nothing for them to sit on. It just was, the tides are getting higher. There's no question about it. And that's one of my main concerns, is that whenever these surges come, they're going to get higher and worse. And whoever's there, it won't be me, but whoever's there is just going to be faced with the same situation. The house is not in danger. And I would like to correct one thing. I have never, ever seen water washing off the top of the cliff. Everything there goes back away from the cliff. And there is one bowl right out in front of the house that in the other day's 2.5-inch rainstorm was dry within 20 minutes after the rain stopped. That sand in that cliff area, I believe geologically it's called Carver coarse sand. It just, water goes through it like a sieve. So that is really not an issue, the washing from the top. We don't even get it from our neighbor with lawns. He put in a system for his roof drain so that anything we ever got before that. That is not an issue. The issue is from below, when the surges come from Mother Nature that none of us have any control over. These rocks have moved. They have moved. Every year I can take rocks, it takes 3 of us to pick up, that are out on the beach. We get them back, we throw them up on top again. Some of you may remember Bert's Restaurant in Plymouth that had a boulder in the building. It's amazing. You would not believe that even without a superstorm, what the rocks do, what they do move. And they readjust themselves, and we keep throwing them back up there. But really, the best way that we can see to prepare for the future is to just add some more at the top to protect it when these high surges come and prevent these washouts. And to have to go in there and repair, which is disruptive to the area and to the upstairs area where we have to work. We have to bring in material and then lug it with wheelbarrows and so forth to the top of the cliff, and then climb up and down there, putting plantings in, which is disruptive to that cliff structure. We'd like to see some rock structures which would prevent the storm surges from causing these erosion areas, and then get the plantings in there that will stay and survive. And just not so we don't have to be disruptive to the area, we just like to get it done. I'm not saying it's gonna last 100 years, because I'm quite sure none of us would expect it would.
Well, none of us will be around 100 years from now unless
None of
there's
us
some
will, but,
breakthrough in science. But
Yeah,
thank you. I think you have a good team. I think your engineer understands what
Yeah, they've
what
done a
the
good
issues
job for
are.
us, and we'll go through the suggestions that have been put forth here, and we'll see what we can come up with.
Okay, thank you. I
And we
think
thank you
he
for your
understands how to, he understands what the issues are and how to design something that
Yeah, well, he's been there, done that.
you don't have to go out there in the next storm.
Thank you.
Oh, he'll be out there.
Yeah, I know, he'll
He
be out.
tripped down some stairs, so he doesn't usually
Oh,
walk up
that's
stairs.
why, yeah, I fell down stairs.
Oh, well, she did. She fell down your stairs too.
Uh-oh.
We were out on your site together and she was next to me and the next thing I knew, she was in the water.
Uh-oh.
So, don't go yet. We have a motion and a second on the table for a continuance until
October 17th.
October 17th. Any other questions? Okay, all in favor of the motion on the table for continuance to the 17th, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much for your time.
I would like to extend his simple eloquence with describing things. That was a delight to hear him talk about his property, and I truly mean that.
He's been there for a long time. He knows it better than anyone.
He described it to a T. That was awesome.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Peter Bennett, 344 Quistit Avenue, for permission to demolish an accessory structure garage and to construct an enlarged structure with attached screen porch, bulkhead, to remove trees, install mitigation plantings, Title V sewage disposal system, dry wells, parking area, utilities, remove pavement, regrade, and associated clearing, excavating, grading, and landscaping.
Perfect timing, Mr. Porcello. You're up.
Do you want to, 344 Quistit. Good evening, Mike.
Madam Chairman, we need to leave the forum and then Mike can catch his breath.
Here, you can read it.
Tommy, Maury, Tom, Ed, and Court, right?
Yep.
I wasn't on this one, right? Oh, yeah, yeah. Good evening, Mike.
Madam Chairman, members of the commission, my name is Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. This is a continuation of a previous public hearing, and we reviewed the entire project, and there was some requested and suggestions for some minor revisions which we made to the plan. They include shifting of a cedar tree that was too close to an existing 10-inch oak, an adjustment of a small landscape wall away from the 10-inch oak, an adjustment of the contours to make sure that we don't have any impact on the existing maple tree. And we put a limit of work at the top of the small retaining wall to make sure that the trees that are adjacent to it will be protected. And there was also a request for the estimate of the volume of cotton fill, which I provided in a cover letter that I don't have at my fingertips.
110 cubic yards.
In that,
One, yeah.
Basically, it's a net haul site, if you will. It's an excavation for the basement and the accessory structure. There's minor regrading, but the minor regrading certainly is less than the excavation for the basement, so that will be hauled off-site. It won't be placed on-site. And I think that sums up the provisions.
This one was added. Take it away.
I'm happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions?
May I make a motion to close the hearing and take it under advisement?
Second.
Good, Maury?
Yep,
Okay.
everything that he had, we asked for, he gave us.
I'll give
Thank
the
you.
audience a chance. Nobody here has any questions? You addressed all the concerns? Motion on the table to close this hearing and take it under advisement. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thanks, Mike. How did you get from Mashpee so quickly?
Good answer.
Richard Romanoff, 10 Fiddler's Cove Road, North Falmouth, for permission to remove ornamental plantings and revegetate with native trees and shrubs, and to mitigate for eastern red cedars removed, to come into compliance under DEP 253279.
Madam Chairman, the quorum is Tommy, Maury, Betsy, Tom, Ed, and Courtney.
Madam Chairman, again, for the record, Michael Borselli, Falmouth Engineering, and I represent the applicant. We made some very minor changes to this plan to address issues raised by staff, and they included shifting the proposed eastern red cedars away from this lot line and ensuring that they're spaced properly, and then placing an area, an additional mitigation area of bayberry down in this location.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Jen? Courtney? Ed? Tom? Tommy? Maury?
Make a motion to close and take it under advisement.
Second.
Last chance for any comments on this one. All in favor of closing this hearing and take it under advisement, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Unanimous, so moved.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Continued request to amend the existing order of conditions. Philip Cavallo, 297 Quaker Road.
Madam Chairman, can we amend that date? I read that too quickly when you asked me the first time. I'm shuffling my papers, and they actually requested a continuance until October 23rd,
Oh.
not the 26th of September.
Okay, we voted 26th of September. Could I have a motion to change that to October 23rd?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Did you get that, Susan?
Wait a minute. It's gonna be the 24th
Fourth.
tonight, is that okay? Okay.
Do we get to have a meeting on Halloween night?
Yes, you actually do.
We haven't done this for a few years, Courtney.
I know
Ed,
it.
Halloween night meeting.
Oh, I'm spooked already.
So Cavallo was,
29th of,
24th.
24th, 24th of October.
Do we have to revise that?
Okay, are we all on the same page? We are gonna vote it. We have a motion and a second on the table. Thank you. A motion and a second on the table to continue Philip Cavallo, 297 Quaker Road, until October 24th. There we go. On to request for hearings under a certificate of compliance. Robert Haggett, 400 Acapesket Road. Request to allow in-ground irrigation system to stay in place under DEP 253737.
Yes, Madam Chairman, the applicant has requested to continue his hearing until September 19th.
so moved.
Second.
Any questions? Okay, motion on the table is a continuance to September 19th. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Clyde and Terrell McGee, 35 Bournes Pond Road, East Falmouth, request to allow the in-ground irrigation system to stay in place under DEP 253701.
Madam Chairman, just to give a brief background on this, they've come to you on one specific issue in the compliance. outstanding issue that staff will not make a decision for the board in the field on, so that's why we're here.
Okay, well, let me just ask you a question, Mike. Was this requested? Was an in-ground irrigation system requested?
No. If I could just give you a little background, and I think this is going to be, this could be a dilemma on a lot of orders of conditions that you've issued in what I call a transition period, from a time, there's a time, and this is one of them, and the one that you continued is similar, by the way, there's where your orders of conditions aren't explicit in prohibiting a sprinkler system as they are now. Now your orders of conditions are very clear that there shall be no permanent underground irrigation system, only temporary until the plants and vegetation are established. So my client and his construction team were ignorant of the fact that there was a prohibition or no approval, if that's a better way of saying it, to have the sprinkler system in the ground. So they, in my opinion, reasonably assumed that the installation of a sprinkler system is very non-impacted, if you will. It's small, it's black polyethylene pipe that's plowed into the grass, and hand-installed sprinkler heads are placed wherever you want to irrigate. So they innocently, and ignorant of your policies, recent policies of prohibiting underground sprinkler systems, installed this underground sprinkler system. So if it had been explicit, they certainly would have not had permission. So we're asking for your consideration. Now, of course, the argument on the other side is always going to be that that's a construction activity that was not specifically granted, but it's a...
You're right, that's the argument I was just going to give you, Mike.
Right, but it's a construction activity that's very limited at worst. It doesn't, the activity in and of itself doesn't ever pose an impact on wetland resources, but the impact that you're concerned about, at least the way I understand it, the impact that you're concerned about and why you now make it a standard condition is that sprinkler systems can cause excessive watering, which could then cause some runoff off of ground surfaces that may have nitrogen, fertilizers, and then those, that runoff could then enter in our coastal ponds, and we all know the condition of our coastal ponds.
And there's another reason, Mike. All the vegetation that's in the buffer should be native vegetation. It doesn't require excess water.
True.
Once it's established, it shouldn't require any water.
True, we understand that. And also the lawn, you specify, and it's a standard condition at all the time, that you must use the family-friendly lawn mix, which is drought-tolerant fescues and slow-release fertilizers. So I guess we're here because the applicant was unaware, or he would not have done this. And we believe that the same level of protection to the environment will exist with this sprinkler system than with if you were to require him to remove it, because the site is very stable, there's no erosion issues, and he did in fact install the family-friendly lawn throughout this property so that the impacts to potential runoff from the lawn are really mitigated by that condition, that they can't have fertilization that would run off. So we're kind of in a quandary, and that's why we thought we'd bring it to the board, because the applicant would rather not remove the very expensive underground sprinkler system that he installed.
Okay, personally, I'm going to start out. I'm not in a quandary because we've had this, there are other engineers in the room who have been in a similar situation where it was, an underground system was permitted in the area that wasn't under our jurisdiction. And then when additional work was done, they added it into our system and we required them to take it back out again.
Yeah, I just say, I think there's a distinct difference between this and that type of situation, because it was never, this order of conditions was, I think, issued in '09, and at that time, it wasn't really a hot topic to the point where you had it in your decisions, and the owner and the contractor innocently were unaware of it, or they wouldn't have put it in. So I think that's the distinction.
Well, if they wanted it, they should have included it. That's my position.
Yeah, I understand.
By definition, the family-friendly, Falmouth-friendly lawns, which include the provision that there be 8 inches of loam and drought-tolerant fescues, strongly implies that once the lawn is established, it does not need to be watered. If it turns brown in the summer because it's dry, it simply goes dormant. And so the whole idea behind not having irrigation systems is that you are reducing excessive water that not only is an issue from the standpoint of runoff, but most of the water that goes into irrigation systems is also part of the town drinking water. So I have an issue with this. I don't care how explicit it was or not. But if they put a drought-tolerant lawn in, they don't need it to be irrigated. Now, I also, and we have, in the past, asked, and when situations like this have come up, have the people take it out. Now, I realize that your client probably has a well-established lawn at this point, and that to pull out an irrigation system would undoubtedly be destructive and of considerable expense to the person. However, there is a solution that we've already mandated in previous cases. Very simple. The irrigation system is cut off where it comes out of the house, and the piping and the control boxes are removed there, and all the irrigation heads are removed, so that it effectively disables the system, and that takes care of the problem. So that's a solution that your client might want to consider, assuming the rest of the board is willing to buy into it.
Well, yeah, if I could, Madam Chairman, if we were not to convince you to allow it to remain, that would be the way that we would do it. We wouldn't take the black tubing out. There's no real value to that other than doing more disruption. But I'm trying to make a case that, in this case, in others, that you are sure to come upon, there's going to be numerous compliances by me and other engineers in town where this is going to be an issue. And it's unfortunate because it wasn't really clear. It really wasn't clear.
But Mike, why do you suppose we would require drought-tolerant fescues only to then allow you to irrigate them? I need an answer on that. That's a complete dichotomy.
Because people are not, the general public isn't as educated as you on certain things like this, and when someone invests significant monies into a complete renovation, reconstruction of a home, one of the amenities that is typical is irrigation, and it's just a common occurrence. And if we all know that if people put in lawn, regardless of what you say, they want the lawn to be green. I mean, that's true. I mean, there's no doubt about it. People want their lawn to be green. Now, whether you agree with that or not is another story, but the general public, if they have lawn.
Well, we certainly wouldn't allow you to have the irrigation system if that's why you're telling us you're having it. You're telling us that if we allow it, you're going to use it to keep that lawn green, even when it should be dry.
Drought-tolerant fescues and family-friendly lawns can remain green throughout the season if they.
So you're telling us that that's what you're going to do? You're telling us if you have that system there, you're going to continue to use it, continue to use drinking water,
Yes.
continue to potentially put water into, and nitrogen into Warren's Pond?
That was the intention when it was installed. I mean, I would be.
Okay, that makes things even clearer for the board.
I mean, that's why it was installed, because there's an expectation of the way a landscape will look to a property owner. And without the underground irrigation system, you can be sure that the alternative would be to be dragging hoses all over the yard, and the same amount of water is gonna get on the grass, it's just gonna be less convenient. You just, instead of having a timer that monitors the water, there'll be hoses and sprinklers on a routine basis that is not prohibited.
Okay, I think we've gotten your argument.
Madam
Let's,
Chairman, I just want to say something, just to clarify, not to clarify, to address something Mr. Borselli said. I don't think it was unclear. The reason this order was issued in what, like 2009? The reason it started going into the orders of conditions very specifically was because staff was tired of having this argument with the engineers and the consultants in the field when it came to compliance. So there was a knowledge of this out there.
yeah, this isn't the first time.
It just unfortunately was not relayed to the applicant, you know?
No, I mean,
People
we've
are
been
aware. I mean,
consistent,
this is
and I know there are other
staff has
engineers
been
who are in the room
consistent.
who have had,
And my theory about not having it specifically written, not theory, but my response to it not being specifically written into the order of conditions is you didn't tell them they couldn't have a dock out there and they didn't build one. So it wasn't a permitted activity. And I don't think that, it's unfortunate that the applicant got advice that was, got
Inappropriate.
inappropriate advice, thank you, Ed, because this is a discussion the staff has been having with, you know, with people involved in compliances for quite some time, and I'm not saying it specifically you, Mike, I'm just saying that, you know, because I know you guys are out when construction starts, and
No,
you're
that's
not
not true.
always around,
See,
aware of
that's the
things.
situation. I don't know what advice
You're not
Jan's
aware
referring
of
to, but the only advice and direction that the contractor will have is what's written in that order of conditions.
and I didn't see an in-ground
Well, what I'm
system
saying,
on,
Mike, is if
on
they
that.
were told it
Did
was okay.
Were you told,
Yeah,
do you
well,
remember?
no one would tell them
two
it's
things.
okay with the
I wasn't
knowledge that
saying
they have
that.
today.
I know
But back in
sometimes you come in at
'09,
the end.
back in '09, there was no, this was not something you were talking about that was made in public awareness like it is now. You talked about it, but not the same.
We understand your argument. Ed, you've been
Yes,
very patient.
I have two things. It is not our responsibility to put into every order of conditions a long list of all of the things we are not permitting. And things like irrigation systems, in my mind, fall into that category. But secondly, the idea of abandoning it in place has come up, and I cannot support that, only because I think I know a little bit about human nature. And unfortunately, I think if the system is abandoned in place with only the connection to the house removed, human nature being what it is, the temptation really can be very, very great and almost irresistible to go in a day after a certificate of compliance has been issued and reconnect the whole system. So the only process and activity I can support is to remove the entire system, not just abandoning it in place.
Comment?
I also have been patient. The word quandary was mentioned at the beginning of this, and some do not have a quandary this. I will state my position on this. We have, as a board, when a private well was issued, said that the irrigation system was okay. That was on a waterfront property in town, private well, irrigation system, it was all right. I've seen my yard flood. I don't irrigate my yard. The only time it gets water is if the dog's getting washed. I had a flood from my neighbor having their irrigation hoses on. I am in the trade. I deal with properties similar to this all the time. I would never, in my wildest dreams, mandate someone to rip up a system with the sole fact that they may do something. That I will not ever do. The proper maintenance of a home, there's substantial monies invested in these properties. There was no, and I'm gonna play the devil's advocate momentarily. There wasn't something in the order that said they couldn't. And my recollection is there was a lot of discussion of policy at that time, and because of the activities of others, we had to make it more specific on the paper. So I can understand with the ambivalence of somebody to look at something and go and think that, well, it's all right, they didn't say we couldn't, and it's not a dock in the water, and it's not these other things, it's a very minor, and I repeat, minor. In 4 hours, you've got a system in, okay? It's not like you're doing something really noticeable. It's an activity that if you didn't know it was going in, half the time you wouldn't know it's there. The technologies that I've been exposed to in the last year, because I've been grappling with, it just, sometimes irrigation is allowed, and sometimes it isn't. Now, more recently, it is not, but I'm really stuck on it. We've installed drip systems that help in time of need for the plantings. We want them to be established. I just don't get past I'm gonna mirror what Mr. Borselli had said. The hose is being dragged out and left on. And somebody going to the grocery store and forgetting that they put that last sprinkler over in the corner, or tell their son or daughter to shut it off before I get home. Make sure you do that, and they go for a bicycle ride. Next thing you know, you get 6 hours of watering going. These systems, I was exposed recently to one. It was managed so well, from his phone, for crying out loud. And it was a system that was responsible for the areas that are in jurisdiction. It's responsible for the plantings that are really pretty up near it's zoned, and each activity of that system was designed for that site. And I'm at a loss to understand, and I may be naive, and I may be educated by others, I'm at a loss to understand that the antichrist of a compliance is this irrigation system. All other hurdles were able to be crossed, but this ends up being a thorn in somebody's heel. And that somebody is me, because a properly used irrigation system, someone who's responsible, someone who has put, and we are gonna have to deal with this, because it is that time period of several years of that gray, and they're gonna look for something. And the one part I'm gonna trip over is that we approved the private well one, but we're not, just because it's a town water, we're not going to.
The private one, well, on the one out on Point Road, is that the one you're thinking of?
There was no.
Is that the one that Mike?
It was one of Mr. Rosselli's projects.
Oh, Mike's, okay.
And, well, actually, there was another one now.
On Point Road.
Yep.
It's a different water body. I think some of the concern with irrigation systems in certain areas of towns is the nutrient loading of the coastal embayment. So the one on 25 Point Road was right on Buzzards Bay, so I could see where that might be a little different.
And yet, it's just different enough that as an individual, I struggle with saying something's okay here but not here. And I have not been exposed to somebody leaving a programmed irrigation system on, and I know there's gonna be a rebuttal. I have myself not had anybody had it on other than the appropriate amount of time that it's.
Well, you must be in parts of town where I don't run on rainy days, where it's the wrong day of the week, and it's pouring rain, and people's irrigation systems are on. So there's somebody in town with an irrigation system that isn't running it properly.
And I'm not gonna deny that, but I don't wanna do a blanket that, people who are asking, and there's a.
Remember that our decisions are not made on the people who happen to be living in a place where our decisions are made on what are the activities and what effect does it have on the environment.
And that's where okay, thank you.
And Mr. Crane pointed out that there are many people who try to do the right thing, but you never know who's gonna move into a property and whether that action will be consistent, or they'll even know what they're supposed to be doing.
Thank you.
Maureen and Tommy, you both have been very patient on this
I
side.
just had, after reading the narrative from, which you might not be able to respond to, Mike, from the homeowner, it's the McGee's, right, that we're talking about?
Yes.
Yes. I want to make sure I had the right letter. It said that it was recently installed by Bob Inman. This is August 30th, 2012. So I didn't go out to the site, and I apologize, because I didn't know this discussion was going to be up tonight. Is the lawn all established and beautiful? So it hasn't been recent, like recent meaning in last year?
It was
Okay.
installed in the spring when the lawn
Spring.
went in.
Okay.
You know, it was recent meaning
Well, I
a few
didn't know,
months ago.
you know, you just had new,
Yeah.
new saw, you know, new turf coming up right now that, you know, because it was that recent.
It's
So meaning,
definitely the proper seed mix. It's clearly Falmouth-friendly lawn, but it was recent. It was put in
and I'm not gonna beat this up, they've all discussed it, and I just, you know, it is hard to put everything in an order that you're not supposed to do. So if it's, we only put things in the order that you're allowed to do. So, you know, when you put an AC unit, it's on the order.
They're just gonna say AC unit,
Outdoor shower.
outdoor showers.
These are all the little things, so, dry wells, you know, those are the things that are usually stated that are, you know, add-ons besides our boilerplate. And irrigation is one of those that has been on some, and not on some, so it has definitely been asked for on certain projects.
Oh, there's
So,
no doubt. Now it is, yeah.
yeah, so, and it's just like water and electric to a dock, you know, it's, you know, you just don't assume you can put it in, you ask for it, and we say yes or no. So that's all I have to say on that subject, thank you.
Okay. So, do you want us to take a vote tonight, or we'll take a vote next week?
It's up to you, Madam Chairman, you can think about it and vote next week if you'd like,
Yeah.
What's people's,
or you can vote.
Make a motion to approve the irrigation system.
Second.
okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Madam Chairman?
So,
Madam
for the
Chairman?
certificate of compliance.
Yeah.
I want to have another chance to speak. I want to point out a section of your regs that you may not be aware of.
Okay, but let's get the motion on the table.
Make a motion for the certificate of compliance regarding the
Installation of irrigation.
installation of the irrigation.
Could I have a second on that?
I did, second.
Okay.
Maureen seconded.
Mike,
In 10.18, there's a provision, 10.188H. It's important probably to read it. And it talks about all lawns within resource area buffer shall be planted and managed according to Falmouth County lawn guidelines and safe organic practices. And then it's, the last sentence says lawns may be irrigated for 2 growing seasons after planting, but not thereafter.
yeah, we allow that.
Right, so we want a compliance to be issued with that sprinkler system being our irrigation system, and after 2 years, it'll be abandoned. Doesn't specify underground, above ground, temporary, permanent. So we have an irrigation system, we want to make use of it for 2 years in accordance with your regulations.
The board allows for above-ground drip irrigation system, so you can't naturally assume that the irrigation means an underground system. And if you were to ask for that, Mike, I would have to recommend that the board not issue the COC for 2 years, because there's no guarantee. I mean, I can tell you, you know, the sky's gonna be blue in 2 years. I can't sit there and recommend to the board that they make a determination based on, you know, who will abandon it. That's not a fair question to ask the board. I'm
Well,
sorry.
I'm reading right from the regs.
I
You have the ability to do a follow-up, you can calendar
Yeah,
it.
no, so your choice, so what she's saying is your choice is you can have it for 2 years and ask for compliance in 2 years.
After,
I don't think we should have to wait to get a compliance for 2 years, when your regulations allow you to, it says right here, may be irrigated for 2 growing
May.
seasons after
May
May,
be,
and irrigation
we
usually
call for
is
the vote?
above ground.
I'm reading out of your regs.
Can we call for the vote?
yep, okay, so the motion on the table is to, issue a certificate of compliance allowing the in-ground irrigation system, which is what the request is. You made a motion, you made a second. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Opposed. Thanks, Mike.
Madam Chairman, if you wouldn't mind
I
taking-
would. The Boy Scouts are here.
They have to go to school.
So they don't have to sit through the next two agenda items. Madam Chairman, you all received a letter from Troop 42?
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Boy Scout Troop 42 would like to request permission to
But
camp.
you know what? Before you start, you have to tell us who you are.
Okay, my name is Lucas Brown. I'm a Life Scout from Troop 42,
Okay?
chartered in East Falmouth to the St. Anthony's Catholic Church.
Okay, and you've been the one drafted to make this request on behalf of your troop.
I have.
Right.
We would like to request permission to camp at the Sousa Conservation Area on the Coonamessa Pond.
Have you been there before?
I have.
Yeah.
Actually, the troop has camped there for the past 5 or 6 years.
That's right. This is an annual event for us.
Longer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Each year, we contact the 300 committee and arrange for a service project to be done on the land in accordance to our values of environmentalism and service. Boy Scout Troop 42 practices a leave no trace policy, which we have, we carry out every single camp out. We have a chemical toilet, we pack everything in and out, we have trash bags, and we do a sweep of the campsite when we leave.
So you actually take more out than you bring in.
We do.
Good.
I think that's it.
Yeah, and the only,
Madam Chairman, would be September 28th through the 30th.
Yes.
yeah, and the issue in the past, but apparently you're just using cook stoves. So there'll be no fire, so
Oh,
you
no
don't need to
open
get a fire
fires.
permit.
No open fires.
Okay.
Well, I make a motion to allow the Boy Scouts to have their camp out.
Second.
Enthusiastically seconded with Tom.
Okay. Courtney, did you?
No, I was just about to make the
You were
motion.
gonna enthusiastically second it, as was Ed.
Yeah, we're all eager to second this one.
So we have a motion and a second on the table. I don't think anybody has any questions. They're enthusiastically seconding it. Is there any comments from the audience?
But thank you very much.
Seeing none, thank you very much. We appreciate your help now, and I don't know if it's your troop, but various troops have come in and done various work for us, trails, et cetera. Go to the 300 committee, they always have little trail jobs if people are looking for that. So,
One super
So
quick
can we vote?
comment.
We
In
have to vote.
full disclosure, this
Sir.
happens to be my son.
well, you have to tell us who you are.
I'm Russell Brown, I'm the Scoutmaster.
We could say Mr. Brown, but, so
I'm-
Russell
yes,
Brown.
I'm Mr. Russell Brown, I'm the Scoutmaster for Boy Scout Troop 42. You are going to see Lucas again in the next few weeks because he's going to have a proposal for you. He's been working with the 300 committee, and he actually has some trails flagged on the Hayway and Allen parcels.
Oh, excellent.
Off of Carrot Shop Road and north of Carrot Shop Road and south of Hayway Road. So he's going to be before you again with a proposal for a service project.
Good, well, we look forward to it. Now he's practiced, he's all set to go. So now we have to take our vote. All in favor of the motion on the table, which is to give permission to Scout
Scout.
Trip 242?
42, yes.
42. Scout Troop 42 to camp out 28th to 30th of September, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? It's unanimous, so moved. Thank you very much.
I'm gonna take him home and do this.
Have fun.
Thank you for your.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, enforcement issues. Robert Bauer, trustee, 43 Gunning Point Road and Gunning Point Road, map 3706000000, Falmouth, for altering wetland resource area and a buffer to resource areas as defined in FWR 10.00 and 310 CMR 10.00. Jen?
Yes, Madam Chairman, the board has been asked to hear an enforcement issue out on board's concerns with the construction of revetments and seawalls along various properties in Gunning Point in the past, and this particular drawing is actually, looks like it's tied into one of those seawalls. The current property owner was not, that listed 43 was not the property owner at the time that the wall was constructed. It was constructed back in 2001 or permitted back in 2001, 2003, that timeframe, well before my time, well before the current property owners residing at the property. So they were listed because the staff was confused as to exactly where this groin was lying when we had to advertise this.
Okay.
So, but that will be clarified tonight, but I just wanted to let the board know that the current property owner at 43 Gunning Point was not the property owner involved when the wall was built and tied into the ground.
Okay, thank you. So, I mean, it may be that this has nothing to do with 43, in which case we'll go to the next step. Jen?
What,
Thank you. Thanks, Peter.
While we're waiting for that, I can introduce myself. I'm Peter Wasdorf, resident of Sippawisset, president of the Sippawisset Association. I want to thank the commissioners and the staff for their time and attention as we raise some serious issues about both the eastern groin and the revetment along 43 Gunning Point.
almost there.
We plan to address both those. I know you're running over 2 hours. You have some other items on the business. We feel what's important is that the necessary time be paid attention to get this right. There have been complaints about this project starting as far back as 2004. We've been before the commission. Various members have been before the commission, other boards in town. And we'd ask that you take your time, scrutinize our evidence, scrutinize any rebuttals that you get from expert witnesses, and get this done right. It's important, and it's been going on a long time. I should also mention, this is my first PowerPoint. I've been subjected to them. I've never been the person doing the subjecting, so I apologize in advance. There are a lot of photos, as you can see, and I plan to run through it very quickly because there are others who also would like to speak.
I'm not quite sure what the computer is doing. There we go.
Control-Alt-Delete. Don't you work with computers? Yeah. Well, I know.
We're off and running. We'll go to slide 2. As I said, we're here to address a serious problems with the eastern groin and the riprap seawall at 43 Gunning Points. Many of the remarks that you'll hear tonight on the particular seawall at 43 will also apply to other seawalls on Gunning Point, both built and in the process of getting permitted. We've often said that the problems here are not the fault of the Conservation Commission. The Conservation Commission, we know the volunteers are some of the hardest working volunteers in town. We know the staff has suffered cutbacks. And they depend on the word and the accuracy of the licensed professionals who appear before them and the attorneys for accurate information. In the case of 43 Gunning Point, that information quite often was not correct. Next slide. This is to locate you. Gunning Point is the loop going west there. Buzzards Bay is to the left, and 43 is where the locus arrow is going to. Next slide. This is a picture from the conservation files dated 2002. You're at the central groin looking east in a northerly direction. And I'll point out the 2 boulders. Next slide. That's the same thing as the plan. And I'll point out on the right-hand side of the seawall, you see a fairly detailed groin that appears there. Next slide. That's the same area that's circled. Next slide. This is a plan from 1978. Although it doesn't pertain directly, it's interesting to note that you'll see riprap along the west side on the left. You'll see the current large groin center. You'll see a complete absence of any notation of riprap from the center on easterly, and the complete absence of the smaller groin at the east end of the property. Next slide. There we are again, looking at that same area that was just depicted. Next slide. The eastern groin was not applied for in the notice of intent. It was never permitted. The applicant filed an amended notice of intent in 2002 to reconstruct the larger groin that you've seen depicted, and that amended NOI was denied. The applicant knew that groins were not permitted under wetlands regulations. They were told the reasons why, and we all know them. Groins trap the downward flow of sand. In this case, the sands at Green or sand-starved beaches to the north, like Whitneck and Chappaqua. The groin appeared at the same time as the new riprap. Next slide. This is a picture of the groin, the small groin, at the east end of the property after the riprapping was done. Next slide. This is a picture of the groin from the other side looking westward after the riprapping was done. Next slide. Mr. McGrath claimed in a 33, I have the wrong date there, 33212 note to the BOS, he stated that the groin that we just saw in that picture was the result of natural processes, wind and wave. We have two aerials which don't show you as well the topography on the ground, but this is a before picture. You can see the central groin. You can see various boulders along the entire rocky coast. And then the next picture, that's the seawall after it was constructed, with the groin on, the small groin on the eastern end of the property substantially larger. Next slide. The eastern groin was never permitted. It is therefore illegal under wetlands regulations. It interferes with the flow of sand that renourishes public and private beaches north of Gunning Point. It prevents the homeowners in the old Sipawissa development, of which there are almost 200, from exercising their easement rights to the beach. It violates the deed restriction, and that's on the building the beach, sorry about that, which was improperly removed from the deed, but which was on the prior deed. And it interferes with the general public's rights to fish, fowl, and navigate along the tidelands. Next slide, please. The actions that we'd like to see the Conservation Commission take, there are no as-built plans in the file, and I think the first thing you folks need to do is request as-built plans to see what actually was placed and where they claim it was placed. Then we think that you need to ask the town engineering department to survey and stake the project so you can compare original plans as built and what the engineering department comes up with. We should get a statement from the contractor, who ordered the construction, who paid for it. And then we should order the removal of a patently illegal groin. Next slide, please. The second major issue at 43 Gunning Point is the riprap or seawall. The NOI states, and I quote, "The project is to reconstruct approximately 285 linear feet, which is the entire coastal bank, of the existing licensed riprap." It further states, "The existing toe stones will be replaced with larger 6-ton toe stones. And the plan shows a backlot line with a substantial portion of the new seawall placed over that line towards the water onto the beach lot." Next slide, please. We see no evidence that the previously existing riprap had a license, despite references to it in the NOI. Next slide, please. This is the plan. It's hard to make out there. You have copies in your files. You might see it here. The plan clearly has a black backlot line that runs across the Buzzards Bay portion of that property. And you can clearly see that substantial portions of the new riprap and revetment run over that line. Next slide, please. The previously existing riprap never ran the entire length of the coastal bank. Next slide, please. Again, you're at the central groin, looking westward. I draw your attention to the vegetated coastal bank and the absence of riprapping. Next slide, please. That picture from the Conservation Commission files shows land under the ocean rocky intertidal shore and coastal bank to the east. There's no mention of riprapping. It's a rocky intertidal shore. Next slide, please. The toe of the new riprap moved substantially closer to the water. That is, the project moved closer to the resource. Next slide, please. I draw your attention to this notch boulder in the foreground. The line to the bank. Next slide, please. The same notch boulder in the foreground with the new revetment. Notice the location of the new toe boulders, the new toe stones. And once again, the aerials, next slide. Before, and we're particularly paying attention to the eastern bank there. Next slide, please. And where the toe stones of that revetment are located now. Next slide, please. The seawall was built in large part on property not shown as the applicants on the town assessor's maps. Next slide, please. There's 43 Gunning Point. There's a clear back lot line on it, as well as all the other properties on Gunning Point. And there's a clear delineation of a beach lot bayward of all those properties. That lot was not in the applicant's name. And I think that's what we have to remember. Next slide, please. The deed to the property at 43 was improperly changed by deleting any reference to a backlot line appearing on the prior deed and adding a new claim to own to the water, to Buzzards Bay.
Do you have enough? Do you have enough? Because if not, you can share.
Thank you.
Yeah, we can share.
Jen
We have to share.
needs a copy. Mike, can you give that to Jen?
And then I'll put it in the record.
I won't take your time to go in detail through the deeds. If you note on the back of page 2, in the middle, and this is the prior deed that was in effect from 1936 through 1998, there is clear reference to a backlot line with surveyor's instructions. It'll take some reading through for you to find that. On the bottom of the second page, the last 2 sentences, there is a clear reference to a right-of-way to the beach and a prohibition of building any structure upon that beach. In the new deed I gave you, the second piece of paper in 1998, all those references have been eliminated, and the northward boundary simply states to Buzzards Bay, is that correct? To the water.
Buzzards Bay.
Who Buzzards Bay?
To Buzzards Bay. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. With regard to the riprapping the seawall, there was no proper notice to abutters. Concom requires that all necessary local and other permits be obtained. A Chapter 91 license from the Mass DEP was only obtained years later after a complaint was filed, despite clear language in the NOI and plan that showed that it was needed. No special permit was obtained from the Board of Selectmen, despite clear language in the zoning regs regarding reconstruction, riprapping, requiring one. Next slide, please. Our requested actions on the seawall. The massive seawall now in place is not the reconstruction of a pre-existing riprap, which was unlicensed and only extended part-way across the back bank. The eastern portion was an eroding coastal bank, necessary for sand replenishment of sand-starved private and town beaches downdrift to the north, like Woodneck and Chappaqua. The project moved the wall much closer to the resource area, and some of the wall was built on property not owned by the applicant. The necessary permits were not obtained as required by the commission. Next slide, please. What we'd ask the commission to consider doing, once again, request as-built plans. Once again, ask the town engineering department to survey and stake the project. Order the town council to do a title search, or hire outside counsel if necessary to do a title search. Get a statement from the contractor who ordered and paid for the riprapping. Order all the non-pre-existing riprap removed. Order the remaining portion of the riprap, which did run along the same line as previously existing riprap, repositioned entirely within the property's back lot lines. Next slide, please. Here are some of the contradictory, misleading, and sometimes false statements that have been made over the course, and this is not a complete list of this project. It was the removal of the backlot line and other language from the deed, and the insertion of a claim to the water. The plans presented to town boards at various times sometimes show the backlot lines, sometimes not. The riprap was claimed to be licensed. We see no evidence of that. The pre-existing riprap. The substantial pre-existing groin was shown on the plan. You can see from the pictures, nothing like that existed at the time. There was a claim that that groin, as built, or as it appears after the riprapping was done, was the result of natural forces, wind and waves, and I think the pictures belie that point. There have been conflicting accounts of whether the groin on 43 property, on 43 Gunning Point's property line extended, included part of that groin or not, or was all the neighbors. There have been statements saying both yes they were and no it wasn't. When a special permit for the stairs was applied for in front of the Board of Selectmen, the staking at that time clearly showed that part of that groin was on the extended property line of 43 Gunning Point. There's a claim that the entire bank had pre-existing riprap. The eastern portion was clearly an eroding bank with no riprap. The new armored seawall was not built to the toe of the pre-existing riprap and was much closer to the resource. The wall was built on property not shown as the applicant's on the town assessor's maps. The project was improperly noticed. The necessary Chapter 91 permit with the state was not obtained until years later. There was either a false property claim on the Chapter 91 or the governor's signature was not obtained because it's required that you have the property owner's name and signature on that document. The necessary special permit was never obtained. The Conservation Commission, as you well know, can issue enforcement in cases where the wetlands regulations have been violated. I think the small groin is a clear violation. The enforcement section of your regs call for the enforcement action be taken against the person or persons committing the violation. It does not call for you to charge the property owner with that. If you can find out who built that wall, you know who violated the wetlands regulations and you can hold them responsible regardless of any property issues. thank you for your time, and I'm sure there are others who'd like to speak. If you have questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them or refer to other people who may do it better.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Are there any other comments?
I would just make a comment that,
Mike, you have to tell us who you are.
I'm Michael Eater, and thank you. And I think Peter covered very well, but I wanted to say how many times I've been before this commission, and I've heard attorneys come before you that have said, and I'm going to quote here, anybody, certainly the person who has brought this to your attention by doing so acknowledges that he has had notice. Well, no one raised issues because this project was improperly advertised. I have here the advertisement from the enterprise. It says a reconstruction and repair of a licensed existing structure. We found it was all false. So there was no opportunity for us in the neighborhood to comment on this. And I think that when you go through the statements that have been made to date, and we would love to go through them and talk to you about them, there have been consistently false statements and improper statements and misleading statements. And there have been acts that call into question legality. I think we've covered all the other points. I have nothing to say at this point, but again, I point out to this commission, the first correspondence regarding this wall was in 2004. We came before you in 2006. We came before you in 2008. I have total sympathy. What do you do when licensed engineers and surveyors provide false information to you? When documents are presented to you to say a case and they clearly are not consistent, if the laws and rules of the state, which are clearly printed, are ignored and not present, it puts you in a very awkward situation, and you have now to very carefully go through and look at what was said to you, what was done, and determine if this was improper. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Any other comments? Hartley?
My name is Hartley Hoskins. I live at 42 Haynes Avenue in Sippowisset. I'd like to speak about the question of the sand along the shore and riprap and groins. A number of historic photographs of the Sippowisset shore are available. Sources include the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection, the town of Falmouth, photos from early promotions of the Sippowisset development, and photos from residents. Here's a picture of 1968, and here is a 2011 photograph. The amount of sand along the shore varies. Some of this variation is seasonal. The more vigorous wave regimes in winter months moves the sand offshore, leaving a rocky shore. The gentler wave regime of summer moves the sand shoreward. Storms summarily move the sand offshore and alongshore. Viewing the collection of photographs chronologically leaves me with the impression that there is less sand along the shore today than decades ago. Other long-term residents share this observation. There are aerial photographs taken in 1968, such as this one, 1975, 1986, 1998, 2002, and 2011. And I have a whole set of those which I'd be happy to give to the commission.
Hartley, you have to give us what you're reading and also those pictures. You have to give us all the pictures.
Okay, this is the picture taken in 1968. Mm-hmm. This is the picture taken in 2011. One of the more important changes in the past 50 years is the armoring of the shore with riprap and groins. Note that the armoring and build-out between in the photos. Coastal geology recognizes that these structures reflect and deflect rather than absorbing wave energy, and that this moves the sand offshore. This deleterious phenomena is a reason for restricting riprap, jetties, and groins. Falmouth now prohibits new riprap, as do a number of other coastal towns. Should the Conservation Commission determine that the permits for some of these structures are not valid, the removal of them could lead to a restoration of more sandy sections along the shore. This would be a welcome improvement to coastal access, which has become more difficult and hazardous in recent years.
Thank you. Any other comments?
My name is George Billings. I live at 62 Gunning Point Road, and I'm an owner of 3 other properties in addition on Gunning Point. Members of my family have enjoyed unobstructed access to the entire ribbon of the beach around Gunning Point for over 100 years. I hope it's obvious I came on the scene somewhat later than that, but for my entire life, literally from weeks after I was born, I've spent time on that beach. As a younger man, I traversed literally every inch of that beach, including the Hills property, which is the property questioned as 43 Gunning Point Road. Spent some of my happiest hours of my entire life at that property, at that beach. And I can say with complete and total confidence that the characterization of the easterly groin, the smaller one, as a repair to an existing structure or as a naturally occurring phenomenon is simply a misrepresentation. I would also add that the construction of the riprap to the east of the main groin, running toward what I think of as the end of Langley Road, is also a misrepresentation, and that causes me great concern. I'm hopeful that the Conservation Commission and the town authorities will take the time to assess the facts in this case and understand the importance of these issues to the residents, not only of Gunning Point and Sippawisset, but to the town as a whole. Some of my happiest times were spent on that beach with easy access, whether it was for fishing, fowling, or navigation, or for clamming and collecting sea glass. It's part of what makes this town special. And I'd like to see that the town respect over 100 years of history of that, which was the intent of Mr. Haynes, who developed the original Sippawisset development, his successors of the Langleys and the Keyses, who owned many of these properties at different points in history. I'd also like to add that my own family, despite having ownership of waterfront property on Gunning Point, and also use of the private bathhouse that used to exist at the southern end, of the Gunning Point Cove Beach, we always understood and respected the rights that were intended by the Sippawisset developers and by the Langley family and later by the Keys family, that there should always be unobstructed, friendly, respectful access to all of the residents owning property in Sippawisset to the entire ribbon of beach. That's my family's history, my grandparents and my parents before me, all my siblings, and generations following behind me. So, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments? Bob?
Good evening. I'm Bob Ament. I'm a Falmouth attorney. I represent the owner of 43 Gunning Point Road, Roland Bauer. He acts as a trustee for 2 trusts of the McCready family. The McCreadys are the beneficial owners, really, of the property. They're the people who reside in the property seasonally, generally. We understood that there would be discussion tonight about the groin that is off to the east of the McCready property, Lot 43. The issues related to the revetment on Lot 43, or at 43 Gunning Point Road, are somewhat new to us, I believe. My goal, my purpose, is the representation of the McCreadys. The McCreadys bought the property at 43 Gunning Point Road in 2007. They did not do the permitting for the revetment in 2001. My office did not represent the parties who did that permitting at that time. When the McCreadys bought the property in 2007, they justifiably relied on a certificate of compliance that was issued in 2003 by the Conservation Commission for the revetment work. The McCreadys have been before the Conservation Commission with respect to the structures they built or renovated on their lot in more recent years. The condition of the revetment never came up. The McCreadys were required during their ownership to license the revetment. It was the position of the engineers that at the time it was installed, the revetment did not require licensing by the state, and the building commissioner also made a determination in connection with the licensing that subsequently occurred that there was zoning compliance. The McCreadys went and they licensed the revetment and recorded the license. And one of the conditions is that they provide public access atop the revetment and install stairs on each side of the revetment to get to the top. They went to the Board of Selectmen for a special permit to have that approved, and they came to the Conservation Commission to get your approval for that. None of the decisions, the 2001 order of conditions that allowed the riprap, the Chapter 91 license, the special permit from the selectmen, the order of conditions to put the stairs up, none of these were appealed by anybody. And the work is underway, that is the contracting to get those stairs installed. The appeal period only expired the end of July. The McCreadys have done nothing to harm anybody. They've simply complied with the request that the revetment be licensed and with the conditions. The Conservation Commission cannot take a look at revetment installed prior to 2000 to a certificate of compliance being issued in 2003. And with respect to an owner of a property who bought in 2007, issue any kind of enforcement order to that person. And based on the last remarks that were made, I think by Mr. Wasdorf, I think he understands that. The person who violated, if there's a violation, who violated wetland regulations may be continuing liable for it, but the McCreadys are not. We are extremely troubled by the fact that this matter has been advertised as an enforcement matter against 43 Gunning Point Road. The groin that is of concern, that the photos have been presented of, is not on the McCready property. It extends from in front of or on the water side of the adjacent property. There is a stake there today that shows that is clear. Mr. McGrath has prepared a survey showing a line that shows that, except for a couple of tiny bit of stone, that riprap, everything that's alleged to be a violation, is on the other side of the extended line of the McCready property. It is not my purpose to say there's not a violation there. It is my purpose to make it clear that the McCreadys are not the proper people, that the owner of 43 Gunning Point Road is not the proper person to have had a enforcement order notice made and to be required to deal with even coming to this hearing. And to suggest that otherwise is unlawful and unfair. We disagree with significant portions of the presentation made just before I spoke. I won't go into the many things that we think are inaccurate, many legal conclusions concerning the ownership issues and easement issues that we disagree with. I will note that the town assessor has not agreed that there are easement rights enjoyed by the owners of other properties in Gunning Point. I'd like to say, however, is that your standard conditions, in your order conditions, say that the Conservation Commission is not to make a determination of property interests. Falmouth Town Council has repeatedly made this point, that the Conservation Commission does not create, does not grant rights to property. It does not make those determinations. And really, I think the issue before you, the primary issue, I think, is access along the water as affected by a groin that is not on the property of the McCready's. And that there can be a solution to that problem, and people working together, and people coming and asking for help, could have solved that problem a long time ago. It is not the McCready's responsibility, but they can participate in dealing with that problem. The suggestion by Mr. Hoskins just now that the goal here really is to remove the riprap that is licensed, permitted by order of conditions, with a certificate of compliance, is just malarkey. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob.
I'd like to say
Well, Mike, before I even introduce you or let you go to the podium, you're already up there.
my name is Michael
But before you go on, Mike, let me just say something. And both sides of this discussion tonight have made the point that there are two issues. One is the groin and one is the riprap. And I see those as two separate issues. And, you know, we'll talk about where we're gonna go next, but those are separate issues. And I agree with you that there's a way, I can see a way that everyone in this room can cooperate on the issue about the groin. Mike.
My name is Michael McGrath. I'm a registered engineer and land surveyor. First thing I want to do
Is pass out something to everyone.
is to pass out the certificate of compliance and a copy of the order. If you read the,
Okay.
if you go to the signature page, I think that's Scott Augusta, Karen Wilson, Brian Grosier, and I can't figure out, who the fourth person is, and then the administrator at the time was Peggy Enslin. I think Jennifer would tell you that when projects are undergoing construction, there is significant back and forth between the contractor and the Conservation Commission staff, and oftentimes with the commission. So here we're being told that you should basically decide that you have superior knowledge, judgment, and education than the people that run the commission and the people that considered how the construction occurred and some of the very people were probably on the ground during the construction, and the bottom line is the town issued a certificate of compliance. So,
Mike, none of us here are making any comments about anything. We're just listening to testimony from the audience.
and then I furnished the commission a letter that I sent to the Conservation Commission. On the second page, there's, I hope you all have it, there's the third paragraph that talks about what the intent of the paragraph was to show you or describe why the groin was different in different plans.
Where's
It was in your package. I know I gave it.
No, Mike, I put it in their package.
All right.
You gave it to me the other day.
The bottom line, what I was trying to do in this was describe why the little groin tees look different at different times. And I even commented that part of the groin is apparently buried on one side with crushed stone. I also have here, but I don't have a plan of record, is DEP Falmouth 25-1779, an order of conditions for John Ganger of 39 Gunning Point Road. I would invite the commission to examine the plan of record, because the plan of record for that shows the eastern groin, and shows it to be drawn the same way as is depicted on the permit plan for the riprap for the means. So we have shown that groin the same way twice, and one of them was the Ganger order was dated 1993. I'm going to give you a copy of the order. I don't have a copy of the order.
Can you tell me who owns the land where the groin is?
No, I don't think it owns that lot.
It's the lot that's along the back line?
No, I don't know who owns that. I think it's Mr. Lieber owns the land to the south. Liebler is where Ganger is right now.
Yes.
Just as a point of information, the groin on the Ganger property
Yeah.
was referred to in the order of conditions in 1993. A certificate of compliance was not promptly requested, as you know, happened more frequently in the past than now, but still happens. When Liebler bought the property, and I just surmise this, not having represented them, they must have required that a certificate of compliance be obtained. And the commission issued a certificate of compliance for the 1993 work on the property in 2005. And I point that out just as another example that even relatively recently, the commission issued a certificate of compliance with respect to an order of condition that mentioned that groin. That groin is, again, off of the Liebler property. It is not on the McCready property, and you've asked who does own it. You know, the ownership of beach extending from upland may depend on a number of factors, including the precise language in the deed, what plans show, and so on. The original recorded plan of the subdivision back at the 1903 plan shows the property lines without just ending at the riprap, without indicating a limitation of the property running to the water. But it's suggested that, as the assessor's map shows, that there is property before the beach, between the beach and the upland lots. In 2010, a deed was conveyed to Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuaries that purported to convey any of such property, as well as the community, the neighborhood beach that's to the east, I believe. And the upshot is that perhaps Salt Pond Area Bird Sanctuary owns the property in question in that drawing. But ownership questions are conclusions based on title examinations, and title examiners don't always agree, and this might be one of those cases. But so I'm not telling you that Salt Pond owns it or doesn't own it.
But
I'm
you're
not telling you who
telling me
does,
they
but I'm telling you that there is a deed that some say means that they own it now and perhaps would be a responsible party merely because of that deed.
Okay, what I'm gonna suggest is we have a continuance of this hearing until a couple weeks after you get back, because this is a lot of material for us all to go through. And I also wanna talk to town council, and I think I have a solution. I have a potential solution depending on the parties involved for the groin issue. And so if it's agreeable to everyone, I would like to, it's not agreeable to you? You don't want it on this, you don't want it on 43 Gunning Point? Is that what you're gonna say?
Well, actually, I have a concern about that. You're suggesting a review of an awful lot of information, and what's necessarily going to involve a fair amount of work to provide counter-arguments. I think that the Conservation Commission owes it to the owner of 43 Gunning Point Road to make it clear that a certificate of compliance issued in 2003 at least with respect to an owner, actually to any owner, but to an owner who bought in 2007, is not going to be undone. We cannot, this commission cannot be having people come years after compliance was issued, when there's been no change in the condition since then. I mean, I think sometimes a certificate of compliance is issued, and that doesn't mean people may still be in violation. But there's no suggestion here that there's been any violation that occurred after the certificate of compliance was issued. And we have to be able to rely on that. And I think that before you do anything, or even start spending your time considering all that's been submitted to you, that you should be talking to town council about that issue. Are we wasting our time? Are we spinning our wheels? Can we even do anything?
Mr. Ament, I fully intend to. Jen and I had a discussion today. I have not been able to meet with town council, but I understand exactly what you're saying. That's exactly a point that I brought up. But I would like to continue. I would like, I don't want us to make any decisions tonight.
No, you can't do that, of course. I just think that perhaps you'll continue it to a date when you would announce where this might go, rather than expect us to respond to all that's been suggested before getting the town council's opinion.
No. What I suggest is, and I hesitate to do it on Halloween.
Well, that's the date I was looking at.
Can you make it Halloween?
I can make it Halloween.
All right.
I can definitely make it Halloween.
What I suggest is we continue this until October 31st. I see two different issues. I would like to explore trying to solve one of the issues. Maybe we could solve it that night. And depending on, our research will bring up further, we'll have further discussion, and we may or may not settle anything that night. But if you want to respond to that, you'll be able to.
Fine, as long as we have an opportunity after October 31st.
Yeah, absolutely.
To respond to the revetment issues if that's necessary.
Right. Yep.
And then one quick question for Paul.
Yeah.
He mentioned documents from building commissioners and ZBA and special permits from Board of Board of Selectmen. Do we need them? Because we referenced them?
Well, have you made a
Well, if you have them,
comment?
Bob, You made reference to documents from the building commissioner.
ZBA and
ZBA.
the Board of Selectmen permits. I just didn't know if you have, everybody else had documents that they referenced, and I just didn't know if you had the documents.
Well, we can certainly provide a copy of these decisions, each of the decisions I referred to, sure.
Okay, yeah, that would be
Yeah,
great.
that would be
Just so
helpful.
they're-
Although again, I think, Conservation Commission should be limited to the Conservation Commission issues.
Well, when you reference them at a hearing, then we usually try to keep whatever, it's like those pictures have to,
Be
everything
happy
goes
to
in the
provide a
file
copy of
now.
those decisions.
The open meeting law kind of kills us on all this stuff now.
Madam Chair, can I make a couple points, just clarification? So first of all, and I've talked with Jen about this, and I think there's agreement, you cannot issue a certificate of compliance for anything but the work that was presented to you. To the extent that any work was done that was not presented to you, that's my point, I'm just making a point because we've heard the statement of, plus I would make the point that the McCready's purchased this property for $6.5 million in 2007. We know it didn't have a Chapter 91 waterways plan. You talk to any realtor, they'll say the first thing you do when you buy a property is you verify that there are any wetland structures that are properly licensed.
We're not getting into Chapter 91 licenses.
We're not, but we also have issues of question of who, when this was built, who represented they own this land. We don't disagree that the issue for us as a neighborhood is those parts of the structures that are on the beach area that we have rights to and there were restrictions for building. It's between you and the board what gets built on other people's properties that we have no rights to. And we make no claims of rights that have been, and many times there have been documents suggesting that we've claimed we have some rights over 43 Gunning Point. We do not. We have rights over this beach parcel. This beach parcel had restrictions until they were removed to say you may not build on that beach parcel. And the fact is that when one looks at these deeds and the titles, and one looks at people in the room and what their current deeds say in terms of rights, many of us have different rights, but many have very clear rights that give them rights to all this beach and shore. And this is a subdivision that the town approved. But I'm just saying, you've got.
But we're not gonna go into the, we're not gonna go into the property rights issue because we don't decide the property rights issue. We have to look at the conservation issues. And there are some issues that I think we can maybe move forward on. Halloween, may I have a,
I make a motion to
yeah, we can make a motion.
continue this till, what's the date?
October 31st.
October 31st.
Second.
Okay, is there another question? Yeah. Phil?
My name is Phil Williams. I find this very interesting. When it comes to the, I think you mentioned two things. There's actually three problems that are before you. One is the groin, the second is the revetment, and the third is the ownership of the property. And just so you may know, I had an excellent lawyer deed me that property, and he had confirmatory deeds. He did a very good job. I owned that property before I gave it to Joe Sweeney and John Cochran. I wrote articles in the newspaper, I think in 1981, but I always can go back, they do exist. That is not a subdivision. There's 300 more or less houses. Each one is described by 1, 2, 3, 4 bounds. Those 4 bounds have lines going to each of them. And inside, if you look, is a square footage area of that property. And the properties are the same, whether they're up on the hill or whether they're on the beach. All the properties. That land, there was easement here, there is an easement here, there is the beach here, there's 2 easements over there, and that whole thing did not belong to anyone else except Haynes, Langley and Keys, Williams, and now Cochran. And the ownership is very clear, right out legally, and there's no one who has a contrary ownership. Each one has a lot lines. Each lot line is bounded by bounds. There's a square footage in each one, and each lot has equal rights, regardless of whether they're up there or there. Those people do not own out into the waters of Buzzards Bay. There is one person who does own into the waters of Buzzards Bay, which is written up and deeded. And that person was Strout, who actually did the designing, and he gave him that into the waters of Buzzards Bay. No one else has anything into the waters of Buzzards Bay. But the town council knows that.
Okay, thanks, Phil. Mike?
Madam Chairman, we still have a couple of more hearings.
Yeah. I know.
I just wanted to tell you
It's
that
over an hour.
you issued an order of conditions for the stairs, and there's an as-built of the riprap.
Okay,
So you have a
that's
certain-
all part of this.
We have all that.
All of them is, it's all here.
All the records.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the table for a continuance till October 31st, with the understanding that anything that's news that's brought up that either side wants to respond to, they'll have an opportunity to. Okay? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any abstention? Unanimous, so moved. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Oh, backing up. Okay, folks, we have another enforcement.
Oh, Hartley. Mr. Hopkins, you have to leave those with us. You use them in a public meeting, so unless you can make
Or
copies.
if you make copies, you make smaller copies, we can use, we can put those in the files.
Can I just have the full board back?
Absolutely, I don't care about the clips or the poster board, I just need the photographs and I can have them copied for you.
No, make it as many as you like.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Another enforcement, Black Beach Harbor Head Association, William Retznikoff, Stephen Doyle, Lawrence Lynch Corporation, the entire length of the dirt roadways for Little Neck Bars Road, Black Beach Hills and Drift Road, West Falmouth. For those of you who remember, we had an RDA. Well, there's been a continuation of that issue for unpermitted work within a resource area buffer. Jen?
Courtney, fold those for me. Thank you. Yes, Madam Chairman, the board issued a positive determination on the work that was proposed by the Black Beach Hills Road Association to do maintenance and grading work out there along Black Beach Hills Road, Drift Road, and Little Neck Bars Road. The applicants had appealed your decision to, or the determination to DEP. We had a site visit out there with DEP on, I believe it was August 22nd.
It was Wednesday, it was the day I left.
August 22nd?
Yeah, Jen was there, Tom was there, I was there, 2 town engineers were there, and the person from DEP was there. Black Beach engineer was there, and 2 representatives of Black Beach were there.
Yes. Okay, so, we all met on site, we discussed it, we were out there for 3 hours. And then I believe on, it was Thursday, August 30th, I received a call on my way into work that the Black Beach Association was grading the road without a permit. They were told by the board that that could not be done. They were told by DEP it could not be done until DEP made their final determination on the appeal. And even that would only cover the Wetlands Protection Act, not the bylaw.
Well, and
But
they
it
didn't
was
say what their
graded
opinion
by
would be.
It was graded by the time I got there. I know there was some discussions between the applicants, the contractor Lawrence Lynch, and your vice chairman, before I made it on site. I called DEP to them that this was happening since they were in the process of issuing their determination, and had also instructed the Black Beach Hills Association not to do the work until a determination was made. The way the schedule worked out, DEP and the analyst for DEP that came down to do the site visit on the 22nd happened to be going to Barnstable that day and stopped by to review the work. And Friday, August 31st, DEP issued an enforcement order without waiting for this board, which usually they wait for the local authorities, but knowing that you guys weren't meeting until today, took it upon themselves to issue a stop work and an basically an enforcement order for them to cease and desist all work in Barrier Beach, because that is what one of the resource areas DEP considers the city to be in. So the work was stopped. I mean, I stopped the grader myself. I met it coming down Black Beach.
Yeah, and I
In
just
my
want to point
Toyota,
out,
there was a big grader.
I just want to point out to the board, Tom twice, correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, twice talked to people at Lawrence Lynch, told them that there wasn't a permit to do work there.
That is correct.
And after he informed the Lawrence Lynch representative that
Then
that
they
that
did
was
the
the
work.
case, the Lawrence Lynch representative proceeded to do the work, correct?
Correct.
Correct.
At the time, when I had a discussion, the first time I was there, there was no equipment. There was just people having a discussion. I introduced myself, took my hat off, put it back on, said, "This is my commissioner hat." Mr. Resnikoff was there, Mr. Doyle was there, John, the representative from Lawrence Lynch was there, and my comment was, "Are you giving a price?" And he said, "No, we're grading." And at that point, I said, "Do you realize there is no permit in place from the town? And I do not know of a determination from the state." I also made the comment that I am not the only person that drives by here. And we started to have a further detailed discussion, and I said, "I'm going to go, we've had debates, I'm going to work." I went out onto the island, took care of my things, and on the way out, the machine was sitting on the road. It was not moving, it was sitting there. Once again, I stopped, and Mr. Resnikoff was not there, Mr. Doyle was not there. It was just the Lynch employees. At that point, again, I said, "Realize that any activities, this would be a violation, and I hope you have a nice day." The machine wasn't moving, there was nothing to put a stop work on, and I left. And I did make a comment, I am not the only person that drives this road, to them as well, and I left. I went and did more of my own work. And somewhere along the line, by the time I came back, Jen had been down on there, I think Maury had been down there.
Been there, yeah.
You know, and
I
it
was
was, everybody was there. So that's how it started. And it's unfortunate that this, I'm trying to look at this in a real positive manner, that this is actually going to force the hand of what we need to do so that we can just get this behind us and go forward. That we have a resolution to not only the Black Beats, but with the contractor as well, so that we have an understanding that we've, as a board, exhausted volunteer time, which I'm a little upset about, but that's okay, I'm a big boy, I can get over that.
How about town taxpayer time?
And there is a plethora of things that we could really bundle up and throw, and I'm not looking forward to that at all. I want to make this as clean as possible and as direct as possible between the two players on this, the association and the contractor. They're going to be handled with an enforcement, but slightly different. And as far as the details of that, I can only make suggestions, but I want others to, I'm taking a backseat on this till,
Okay, and there,
Well, at this point, I think, as far as the association goes, this board's, hate to bring it up, direction to them for the past 4 years was to file a notice of intent. Obviously, we've had some difficulty getting them to listen to that advice and to understand why it needs to be done, and to realize that this is actually going to allow the people in that neighborhood to have a clean way to maintain their road. It is not an encumbrance on their property. It is a order that allows them to do something that falls within this commission's jurisdiction. It is a positive thing.
I just want to make a comment.
I think that
I
should-
think, Tom, we had a long discussion out there before you guys began it, and I think Tom really did an excellent
He did.
job of explaining what the role of an order of conditions could be, that we could issue it for 5 years, that there could be an ongoing maintenance plan. And everybody there agreed that the road needs to be rebuilt.
Yes, and
It's
that's.
beyond the point of just shoving dirt down it.
Yes, so, and without rehashing all of that, I would recommend this board require a notice of intent to be submitted to you in its entirety, with surveyed site plans, the narrative, a design to rebuild that road the way it should be. There's not a lot of separation of groundwater in that area. The stormwater management is extremely difficult. The only way to actually manage the stormwater in that area is to try to force it to go where you would like it to go. It's gonna be a lot of design work on that road. It can be done, can be constructed. But I think this board needs to set a time period and when you'd like to see that. And I would also recommend, just given the history of this and a clear violation and disregard for this commission's and DEP's recommendations and instruction, that if the deadline for the notice of intent is not met, consider a stiffer action. As far as Lawrence Lynch goes, that's extremely difficult because they're a very large company in town. They're a very well-respected company in town. And their people do need to respect the Conservation Commission. And what's troubling to the staff, and what's troubling to, what should be troubling to the board, is that Lawrence Lynch was told twice that morning, don't do it. You do not have a permit. And they disregarded the comments and instruction by your vice chair. So the board's gonna have to decide what you would like to do in regards to Lawrence Lynch, because in this case, I do think that the contractor did need to be named. They were a persons involved with this.
Okay, well, there are two things I'd like to do. One is, I think some of the details, you might have to talk to town council about.
Absolutely.
But I'd like to get the general view, and we could even vote that we're gonna do it with the details to be voted on next week. If, I'm just making a suggestion to start off. Court?
Yeah, clearly you've got two issues here, one, and these have been all outlined. You have the people that live out in Black Beach who's got a road that needs work, and the history of asking for orders of conditions and so forth is all part of it. And that's a whole separate issue. As a contractor, I am appalled that a company of the stature of Lawrence Lynch Corporation would essentially give not only this board, but the town of Falmouth, a rather significant Anglo-Saxon gesture. And that is very irritating to me. I've known Jerry Lynch for years, and I know him to be a very honorable man. And it just doesn't sound like Jerry Lynch, and it troubles me. However, I don't care whether they're Lawrence Lynch or a landscaper who comes in and cuts trees down knowingly in a wetlands area. It's the same thing. And Lawrence Lynch needs to be held accountable by this board. And I think that there's no question that this board should issue a fine to the maximum amount possible that this board has in its legal authority to issue.
Okay, and those details Jen has to check on.
Absolutely, understood. But that's where I'm going with that one. And as far as Black Beach Association is concerned, they, is my view, have not bothered to listen to good advice from this commission. They've tended to construe anything we've done as being obstructionist and denying them their rights to fix their road, when in fact that's not true. And that troubles me a great deal. They somehow feel that if they can wiggle around what the rules are, that that's okay. And they've tried end runs around us, and that only makes it worse in my mind. And I think that Jen's recommendation that an order of conditions be required with the full panoply of plans and engineering and everything else is an absolute. And my recommendation would be that that order be filed within a date certain, and that if it is not filed within that date, that the commission levy a fine on a daily basis to every single property owner who has an interest in this.
Okay, let's,
I just had one comment. I wasn't at the on-site. Was the contractor at the on-site?
no.
Okay.
No.
Because I do know, if I'm not mistaken, that Black Beach came in front of us with a plan that they wanted to do under an RDA originally, well, like a year ago or whatever it was, I don't know the dates. So, Tom, you, and.
It wasn't that plan that they were implementing.
Okay.
They were
well,
just grading.
grading. But my question, I
Which
guess
they had asked permission.
my big concern is that you're saying the meeting with the on-site was on whatever date, the
22nd.
22nd. And this happened on the 30th. I mean, it's, to get equipment scheduled in that short period of time, I mean, it almost appears that they already had a plan to do it, which is
Well,
unfortunate
they
because.
might have, but it was very clear, it was made very clear by Mr. Mahala that
Right.
nothing was to be done
Done.
until, certainly under his purview, which is the State Wetlands Protection Act, until
Right.
he had issued.
I understand that, because when I talked to Jen, she explained that to me. We actually, the day after your on-site, you had it on Wednesday, and Wednesday night, we asked, how did the on-site go? And there was a little brief discussion at that hearing that night. When I went by, because as Tom says, you know, four of us live in West Falmouth and go to the beach almost every single day. He goes to work every day by there. I go by there every single morning at 8 o'clock.
I admit,
When
for a
I
while.
stopped, the Lawrence Lynch representative that was there, and I told him, I mean, by that time, the grader was down the road, and then I called you. But he told me, because I said, what are you doing? And he says, we're grading the road. And I said, but you can't grade the road. He goes, well, we're grading the road. And I asked him who told him to do it, and he said, Mr. Doyle. And the next thing I said to him was, well, Mr. Doyle doesn't have any permits. And he says, well, he said he did. So obviously, again, it's the end run and misrepresentation of, you know, maybe they thought that he had permission, maybe not a permit, maybe that was the wrong term that the
I think that
contractor.
may be, because, I mean, Mr. Doyle was well aware that he didn't have a
Right,
permit.
and
I
he
don't-
might have said
I
he
don't
had
think would-
permission.
I don't think he would, and
Right.
this is my opinion, I don't believe that he would purposely misrepresent
Right.
that to a
Well, that's what
contractor.
I-
I think they felt they
Had
had the right to
Right,
maintain.
permission, meaning not a permit, but
Yeah,
permission
the right
to
to
do
do
that
the work.
type of work.
Yes.
So that is what
Even though it was
my
made clear
take on
that
it,
that was
when
not-
I was
But they
talking
had
to
been
him.
told twice by.
Well,
I know.
And I do not see the activity from the contractor as a malicious thing or a gesture towards the board. I truly think that what you just said is part of it. That there was in the conversation, there was mention that we had talked to town council, we have the right to, and things like that. And at that point, instead of getting into the debate all over again, that was
You
the
would
first
go to
time
work.
that I said, that's it, we've been down
No,
this
but Tom,
path.
they do
I'm going
need
back.
to listen to you.
Yeah, and
They do.
I don't know how much clearer I can be
You
without
were
raising my
perfectly clear.
voice. That, I live in this town, I work with these people, I don't like being the bad guy, but I'm not a bad guy. What I had said was that there is no permits for this, that any work would be a violation. That's pretty crystal clear. And the second time out, how many times I can wave a red flag? So it's at that point, this is what I got. It's out of my hands. I'd like to just make a motion for the association to have a 6-month time period to file a notice of intent, to just approach that one first. That after that 6-month deadline, that whatever notification,
So much. Give them time to get there,
right,
because they have people out there that don't want to do the notice of intent, so they're,
correct. That's just, I'm brainstorming here, guys.
no,
I'm just
they
throwing
don't,
that out.
they refuse to do it. You can't. See, the difference is this road's not owned by 2 people or 1 person.
Right, but we have had other
Yeah.
roads that have been owned by a number of people that have had to get together, that not everybody has agreed on, and there are legal mechanisms.
For the,
Yes.
to hold
Yes.
the association responsible as a whole.
Well, each,
That's not your discussion.
Not my discussion.
that's not
Yeah.
our
So
discussion,
6
but there
months
are
sounds
legal
like-
mechanisms
Okay.
to do this.
Does 6 months sound like a fair amount of time for
Does
the
to me.
legal aspect? Yeah.
The legal aspect is not your concern.
Okay.
Your concern is getting a plan.
I'm just giving a time period so
No,
that
I
we can
know.
get
You guys
this
debate the time
rolling. And in that 6-month time period, if they come in here in front of the board and say, this is what we've gone, they've got return receipt things, and they explain themselves to us and ask, we need another XYZ, just keep a conduit of communication open, but being forthright and, and knowing that we're under the watchful eye now, because
I just want to make something else clear, because it came up in the newspaper. We, as a commission, have no interest in instructing the town on private road policy. Private road policy, we agree completely, is the selectmen's purview.
Correct.
We are charged with any activities that are within wetlands jurisdiction. And that's what this issue is.
And this is a district of critical planning concern, which requires us to be extra diligent in protecting the resources that we're responsible for.
Does this board agree with 6 months?
Well, hold
Wait a
on,
second.
can I speak, please?
Yeah, Ed hasn't gotten to say anything, Tommy hasn't gotten to say anything, and we still have,
Yeah, I'll hold.
other
Go
people
ahead.
have a couple of comments. Ed, I know you had some.
Yeah, well, the last time this was before us was when they came, the association requesting a approval of a RDA,
Correct.
and we declined. We did not give them that RDA, but rather found positive and asked them once again to file a notice of intent. And after that entire process, and all the appropriate people were here, it was absolutely 100% clear what we expected, and it was absolutely clear to everyone in the room that we were not authorizing any work in that area until the proper permitting was done. Subsequent to that meeting, and until we come here tonight, certain people decided to frankly move ahead and grade the road without a permit. I consider it a flagrant and willful and deliberate violation of the Wetlands Protection Act and the Town of Falmouth Wetlands Regulations and Bylaw. And it's a little bit of a challenge, I think, to this commission. That's someone's laid down the gauntlet. And I think I'd like to lay down a gauntlet as well. So we can have two gauntlets on the ground, and we'll see how this thing will turn out. They're challenging us here to see, well, what are you going to do about it, I think is what we're faced with here. And I think what we should do about it is two things. Regarding the contractor, Lawrence Lynch, I think we need to talk to council about what kind of legal action we need to take against the contractor. Secondly, against the Blackheath Homeowners Association. It is a homeowners association of a number of homeowners. I think we need to issue an enforcement order against each one of the property owners individually. And I think we need to talk to town council about levying the maximum penalty for deliberate, willful, and flagrant violation of the regulations. I'm looking for the maximum penalty, and that might be as much as $50 a day per property owner until an order of conditions has been submitted and approved by this commission. But I think all of this does need to be talked with town council. But I guess what I'm just saying here is that we've been challenged, and I think we ought to stand up to that challenge. And I think we owe it to the town to be aboard with some credibility that this kind of action is not tolerated and will not be tolerated. And if people choose to do so, they do so at their own risk and at their own penalty. So I am not too happy about it, as you can tell. And again, I think we need to take maximum enforcement within our power. That's what I have to say.
Ed, I understand that this board is upset. Trust me, I am as upset. I've been dealing with this situation for 4 years, but I am going to be your administrator right now and say that the important thing and the thing that the board should focus on in respect to the association is just getting the wetlands, getting a project that does not have an adverse impact on the wetlands.
But we also need to send a message to all of the other people in this town
Well, and I
who
think-
feel they ought to go out and just
But
ignore our
And I
regulations.
think the message should be,
If you miss that
if
deadline,
you miss the deadline, then these penalties will
Well, they already missed the deadline.
kick in. Well, I'm reluctant to do it for some, we also don't know exactly who's been told and who hasn't been told. I've heard that some people don't want it. I've heard some people can't be contacted. How do I know that even people have been asked to do this? So
That's our responsibility.
Well, I am reluctant to fine people who might have had nothing to do with this. I agree that they should.
They have recourse in the court system if their association has done something that should not have been done.
Ed, you
They
to
have
realize-
recourse.
You have to realize too, the town has been grading this road in this fashion for 35 years, 40 years. Not that it makes it right, but I'm just saying, and that's how this all, it's been moving in this direction to stop doing it this way and get a notice of intent.
I've spoken.
They are working on it, so I mean, I don't.
I understand your frustration.
Frustration.
Plus,
I'm not frustrated at all. I just say we need to be serious, and we need to enforce our regulations if we're to have any credibility.
I understand.
Courtney.
There's a real, obviously from what my own comments are, there's a part of me that absolutely agrees with Ed on this. And I also understand the concept that they're given a date certain to come up with an order of conditions.
A notice of intent.
I mean, a notice of intent, I'm sorry. And that if that isn't, then some kind of penalty kicks in that's applicable to every single homeowner. And I'm on board with that concept. one thing that concerns me, I think about 6 months, and that's a long time to do this. I mean, I would,
I'd
let
rather
me
say
let me
3 or
finish,
4
let me
months, to tell you
finish.
the truth.
Well, a $50 a day fine per property owner, it'll happen very quickly.
I would rather see a shorter period. At the same time, I'd rather see, there has to be an understanding that, given the complexity of the Black Beach Association's family of people, that, maybe the normal 2 or 3 months to come up with a order of conditions, which is what we would probably expect from a single homeowner, is probably unrealistic. Whatever period of time we settle on, I think that implicit in the enforcement order should be some interim benchmarks. They would have to show good faith in the application process, so that it isn't that at the end of the 6-month period, they come and say, we just couldn't pull it together, or the 4-month period, or the 3-month period. I think we need to have some interim steps in this process, or we've got to have a shorter period. And I think in the interim steps, and this is something, it's late at night, I don't think we should
We have a
try to.
lot more to do, actually.
Yeah,
People
and that's
don't
why,
know.
that's why I'm saying, I'm only kind of outlining the concept here. Because inherent in, if you have interim steps, you've got to have interim
Benchmarks.
penalties. That if they don't meet the goal, then
That's too-
there's a
let's-
bite. So,
Let's say
so
there's a
I think
notice,
we need to
And we
look
will
at this later.
ask Jen on a monthly basis for a progress report on it. But I understand what you're saying, but the fact is, our goal is to improve
The wetlands.
the wetlands. And to improve this road, the neighborhood needs an improved road. That's one thing we all agreed on. And I would like to focus on getting a notice of intent. If that notice of intent is not presented to us 6 months to the day that we issued this, give or take a week, then, and you have
You
to
want
talk.
6 months or 3 months?
I
or
think
4
6 months is a reasonable time to afford them to notify people that are in state and out of state. That was one of the complexities of the history of them trying to notify everyone. I don't, Ed,
You know what,
please, just a moment.
it falls almost to the day.
It's-
March 13th is approximately 6 months from
And I don't
Is it a
want,
Wednesday?
Yes.
Betsy, can I interrupt?
I'd rather you didn't. I have the floor and I'd like to finish.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you. I do not want to see this get muddied. I don't want fines imposed immediately. All that's going to do is make this a chocolate mess. It's going to be sticky and ugly. We've had other enforcement issues in this town that are still unresolved, that we've had local contractors involved with, that did not have penalties per diem, and I am not in favor of that at all. I do not want to make this a chocolate mess. I want to get a resolution.
There are two issues. One is the contractor. Jen is gonna talk about.
That's separate. I'm
and that's a
talking about the
single fine.
homeowners,
The homeowners, let's get a notice of intent, and then
I
if
make a
that
motion
notice of
for
intent doesn't come, then there'll
the
be
penalties on that.
penalties.
That's what I'm making a motion on, a 6-month timeline to do that.
Brings you to March 13th, guys, and it's a Wednesday.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a
I
second.
think that's a good,
Court?
I really do recommend
I just think 6 months is too long, or we're gonna have 6 months. I don't want monthly interim points. I think there has to be some kind of
I'd like
thought
to have
out.
4 months. It's,
I made a
Four
motion, we
months
can
is
vote
fine
it.
with me. I'll buy that.
Can we vote the 6 month and just either up or down?
May
Simple
I
as that.
speak, please?
Yep.
I hear a lot of discussion about a notice of intent to do work, but I have to say, when I saw this on the agenda, that was the first I knew about it. That was Monday, maybe, I first saw the agenda. Yesterday, I went out and I drove the entire length of the roads in this particular area. And I'm wondering, a notice of intent to do what? The work has already been done. The road doesn't need any repair right now. The road is quite fine. I went out in my little four-wheel drive Toyota RAV4, but hey, I could have gone in my other nice little car that doesn't take
Ed,
bumps.
that's not gonna
Everything's-
last long.
Everything,
They graded
Everything's,
it,
everything's
graded
been
it
fixed. It's
6
fine,
times last
it's
year.
good for another 5 or 6 years.
No,
They don't,
it's
they've
not.
got no, it's
No,
done.
it's not.
That's not
not.
good for another
It's not.
6
It
months.
isn't.
They're gonna hurry up because that road will be garbage once
Only if
winter
there's a
comes.
big flood, but it's,
No.
I
Ed,
know.
that's,
We drive it all the time.
we drive it, Ed.
It's,
I drove it yesterday.
there's
because
trucks
it's
that are
just been
going in and
done.
out of there. What they need, and why, if I may, Madam Chair, when we did the on-site and we literally walked up and down, there are trucks that have dumpsters, there's oil trucks, there's gas trucks, there's other heavy,
of heavy trucks.
UPS going in there. There's a lot of activity on that, and all it takes is one storm, and next thing you know, it's washboard, next thing you know, it's a pothole. It is a dirt road that needs a maintenance program, and I think the most bulletproof, and this is what for the life of me, I can't understand why people don't see this. This is a bulletproof way to have multiple maintenance programs with a notice of intent. It's a 5-year program that they don't have to, all they gotta do is call the office and call the contractor, and that's it. It's not an IDA for a one-time shot. An IDA is a one-time shot. A notice of intent with a manageable, presentable program is bulletproof. They don't have to come in front of the board that for 5 years. They have a storm event, they call Jen, they call the office, whatever. We're gonna be doing this, we're gonna have Lynch come down. They're not gonna wanna spend money willy-nilly and grade it every 6 weeks. They're gonna grade it when they need to do it. They may not have to grade it if they have
They rebuild it
assistance,
correctly.
if they have assistance with newer technologies for their low-lying areas. It's to address, to make the road system better.
And we talked about various kinds of dense grade in different places for what's needed out
You
there.
guys have a motion on the floor. We do have a lot of other business to get. Now, I know you're emotional about this, but stay focused, guys, okay?
Yes.
So the motion on the floor is for 6 months.
You're gonna have to continue the contractor part of it, but just give them notice first.
Yeah. All in favor of the 6 months, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
I'm opposed.
Okay, have a motion for 4 months.
All right, I
4
make a
months.
motion for 4 months.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, 4 months.
I did.
No, I made the motion, I'm sorry.
I second it.
Tom's
As
seconded.
far as the contractor, you're gonna have to continue that discussion so I can talk to Pat.
Okay, could I have a continuance
I
next
make a
week?
continuance to next week to discuss the
The
contract.
details, and
The
you might need some
details.
details from the
Second.
other. Motion and second, got it? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. The motion was to continue this discussion
On the
on
contractors.
the contractor's fine until next week.
I did.
And I second it.
Tom seconded. And everybody agreed.
Hooray.
Amazing.
Okay.
Vote orders of conditions, Mass Department of, but just look at this, the other business discussion of Boy Scout Troop 42 is all done.
Hooray.
Look at that, wow.
The easiest one of the whole night.
Mass Department of Transportation, care of Thomas McGuire, intersection of Thomas B. Landers Road and Route 28A.
That's a drainage project. Basically, they'll approve the project with the operation and maintenance plan, with all the plans and restrictions that they've provided on the property, on the project.
Yeah,
And
the only,
Scott's reviewed it multiple times.
the only special condition was
We are gonna make a finding that,
there's an unknown pipe.
Right.
well,
And
there's the unknown pipe.
There's an
and-
unknown pipe, and the town and the state are gonna work together and investigate
Correct.
what's at,
In the Mill
what's
Road
at the other
layout.
end.
In the
Yes,
Mill Road
and-
layout.
And also, there should be a finding about, the calculations.
Just as an informational finding.
Yeah, there's an informational finding that
Yep.
the calculations weren't done in accordance with the master model.
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and then there were 3 other
Well, there's no
things.
special condition attached to it, I'm not gonna make
Yeah.
you do it again.
Right.
And then there were 3 other things. Remember the riprap stone to be native, not
Yeah,
the,
not
Correct.
blue.
not the blue, out-of-town stuff. And the dirt that's there to use and not to have any imported dirt.
Yep.
So that we don't bring in.
No fill.
No fill.
Yeah,
No dirt. And the loam and everything from there, because it's all beautiful loam there. Because if
Yeah.
they get it from a brush dump. It'll
Yeah,
be
we don't want.
not weed,
We don't want invasives coming in.
bamboo and everything else. And the other thing was the tree species that they were going to discuss.
Yeah.
To not block the vista, and they might not even put any trees. I don't think it was really, I thought they thought they
And
really
that's
would
along
just.
Crawford Pond, that area right there.
Right, it was
Yeah.
basically the, I think they wanted to appease Salt Pond because there was vegetation there, but,
Yeah,
yeah, you'll figure that
I'd
out.
rather have trees than.
Okay, got it.
And the one tree up at the street, too.
I'd rather have no trees. It's the most beautiful view in West Falmouth. If you put trees all up there,
But if you put.
there are no
bushes,
trees.
If they put bushes,
They're
they'll
not
grow
gonna
up and
put
you still won't
bushes.
see.
They're gonna put nothing.
Oh, they'll
What?
be putting.
They have to put something. You can't leave it unvegetated.
Up by the road,
You gotta put something, you gotta stabilize the dirt.
it's called grass. It's in a field. It's in a grass field
So you want
now.
grass?
They're not gonna plant trees on
If there's
top
a
of
No,
the
we're
grass
not gonna
system.
plant trees.
How about
It's a
Vinca?
grass field.
How about Vinca?
It's a grass field.
Okay.
Stays as grass.
Yeah, where grass is, grass stays.
Grass, got it.
Yep. Make a motion to accept the order as discussed and written.
Second.
Okay, there's an order, motion and second on the table. Any other discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Helena O'Rourke, 120 Alder Avenue, North Falmouth. This came in, Mike did everything we asked.
Grass, it's fine.
Could I have a,
I make a motion to accept as discussed. I just wanna make sure there wasn't.
I move
You have
to,
your normal standard
Yeah,
conditions
okay.
you put on this. Mike made the changes the board was looking for in accordance with saving the tree, the driveway,
Correct.
everything else.
Yep. Okay, there's a motion and a second on the table, right, Susan?
Maury, do you
I
have
made the
anything?
motion.
Okay.
Maury, Tom. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved. Walter Platt, 26 Drift Road, West Falmouth.
This is the garage that is proposed to be raised and rebuilt to a house within the DCPC. Your regulations state that you may include a 200-foot buffer to the salt marsh in this sensitive area. The proposed plan only maintains a 100-foot buffer to the salt marsh. That was probably the biggest issue with this property, that and,
And it would include.
it's not the rebuild of the house, it's unlike one others you've seen in the past, which is a rebuild of an actual home. This is a garage, it was never utilized as a home, it never had a septic, and now they want to make a home.
well, there are two big issues. One is it didn't ever, there wasn't a septic, so a septic would be added, no matter what kind of a septic
So that's
it
not an
was.
improvement to,
That is not an
not an
improvement.
improvement.
It's a non-improvement.
No.
And the other is that vegetated buffer would have to be removed. It's not just that this new house isn't being.
No, and a lot of the other projects that they cited were redevelopment projects. There was already a disturbed buffer there. There's not, this area is not disturbed, except that small little cleared area where the garage is.
Yep.
They're looking at a substantial amount of removal of vegetation.
And then the other issue, the other finding is is what Ed brought up and we expanded on, that this is a very low-lying area. It is right next to the marsh, and it's an area where we definitely expect the marsh to march inland.
Needs to have the opportunity to migrate is the term generally used
Right.
in the science.
Right.
Migrate, and if you build on it, you can't migrate, so to speak.
Yeah.
The marsh, in other words, will move as the water gets deeper and it,
Right, marshland will be
wetlands,
where upland is
upland
now.
become wetlands, right?
Yeah, it's a very shallow
Just
slope.
refresh my memory, there is an existing house on the property?
There's an
No, no, no,
existing
no.
garage.
Garage.
Just a garage?
Who's on the garage?
So essentially, they're turning because we've ruled on these things before, where there's a primary, the main structure is essentially an auxiliary structure.
Just a
And I'm thinking of a case we had a year or so ago over in East Falmouth.
Right.
And we denied it because of those sorts of things, so I think there should be a finding about that.
And the quorum, if anybody did want to know.
Yeah, one other,
Maury, Betsy, Tom, Ed, and Courtney.
Okay,
Okay, just so you know.
yeah, Ed.
I'll check the other ones.
because of what's
This is
been
another-
presented us by the representatives for the applicant, and address some of the issues they're likely to raise and
I will.
future issues on this. I think we need to say that the media, almost weekly, we need in the public media, new information about sea level rise. And it's an everyday occurrence, so that is why we don't put every single one of these bits of information into our into the file on this particular case, and we don't have to if it's public knowledge. So I want to make sure it is public knowledge, widespread information. We all see it almost weekly, something new about sea level rise. And most recently and significantly, we saw something we hadn't seen before, and that is the fact that between, I guess it's the Outer Banks and the Carolinas and all the way up to Cape Ann, there's new information that suggests that sea level rise in this part of our coastline of the United States, Middle Atlantic and parts of the Northeast, sea level rise might even be more significant and greater than the worldwide average. That is very, very new information. So sometimes, as time goes on, the way we react to and enforce regulations changes as new information becomes available. And I have to say the cumulative sum of all the information that we see almost weekly here, and this most recent study, suggests that we have to be extra diligent, and that maybe the people who wrote the regulations allowing the 200-foot buffer had some kind of prescience, if you will, some kind of ability to see what was coming down the pipe before a lot of other people saw it. And it is there in the regulations, and I think it's time that we really begin, particularly in an area called the District of Critical Planning Concern, we really do need to enforce that 200-foot buffer.
So you guys want to bring up that the septic is not an improvement, the low-lying areas, the auxiliary structure, sea level rise, vegetated buffer, and everything that those.
And this isn't really a
topics
redevelopment
need.
of a previous house.
No, it's not, and all of the related information. Got it.
But everything I said, is really
Oh,
addressing
excellent.
the attempt upon the applicant to try and suggest that we're being arbitrary and capricious. I want to nip that one in the bud.
Yep.
Courtney,
I'll make a motion that we approve the project as proposed.
okay, motion on.
Second.
Motion and a second on the table is to approve the project as proposed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Opposed?
Who's on the floor?
Everybody but Tommy. The five of us were. I checked
I
it,
mean,
so.
no.
Nope,
No,
Tommy wasn't
no.
on that one. And Mike isn't here.
I'll take a motion to
Adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Unanimous, so moved.